Hey guys, howdy, I hope you are fine. As you seen in the thumbnail, in this video, we are gonna see, what if Naruto had chakra and harem with Hana part 1, all details in description. And if you want next part of this series, please leave a like and comment 5 blue emoji. Let's get into the video. Also check out Patreon for I have upload Naruto X Dane. Uri's Targarinel uncensored spicy version, link in description. A 4-year-old blonde boy was running through a street with his arms pumping forward and back. Tears were flowing freely out of his yes, and falling off his face and disappearing into the air behind him. The street surrounded by 2-story buildings, the ones the boy passes becomes brightened by an orange glow 100 feet away. LSO emitting from the orange glows were shouts and curses from an angry mob with torches. Why me? Why am I always the one being chased after? I did nothing wrong and they yell and chase after me. If I was a ninja I could get away from them. The boy continued his uncoordinated sprint away from the orange glow, from the torches in the mob's hands, from the hurtful things coming out of their mouths. Then the boy's eyes shot open. If I become a ninja I could do a whole bunch of stuff and they would have to respect me. But if I want to do all that stuff I have to get away from this crowd. The boy, why by now has stopped crying trying to remember what the ninja did to run fast. They leaned forward and put their arms back to balance them out. The blonde boy leaned forward from his upright run and iced his arms to keep him from falling forward going into an aerodynamic form. Amazingly he began running faster. Now he could push forward harder as long as he stayed balanced. Then they have that cool thing, what was it? Chakra I think it was called. I have to focus, I need to find it. The young blonde closed his eyes pushing out the things yelled at him and began focusing looking for something in him while still being verbally persecuted for who he was. Nothing, I can't find anything. Wait, there is something there, it's warm. The boy brought it out of his conscious and into the dark night. Hence suddenly a blue glow burst out of him. The blast wave of chakra slowed the crowd down but then they were really pissed. The young blonde was blasted slightly into the air and a small crater was in his place. The boy landed, turned around and saw the crater. He looked at his dirty hands to see a blue glow emanating from him. The warm feeling, the chakra is now everywhere, I can feel it going thr. Ow, my body, I wonder what happens when I put it in my feet. The blonde focused and pushed the mysterious force to the soles of his ragged sandals. He started running from the crowd, then suddenly he shot forward with a wave of chakra blasting out from behind him kicking up dirt. The blonde became a blur and speeded out of the crowd's view towards the outskirts of the giant village. He shouted an Yahoo! From the fun at his high-speed getaway from the crowd. He jumped up and flew over buildings. This is amazing, if I keep this up I will be a ninja in no time, hell since I'm so young I'll become the Hokage. He landed in a small compound of buildings, no light came out from the building's windows. This place is completely barren, I'll stay here for a while. He crept into a house and searched for a room. He crept silently through a kitchen, a dining room and up a somehow extremely squeaky staircase. He ended up in a small room with a bed for his size and a bunch of toys and practice weapons for ninja. It had a whole bunch of stuff that was orange, his favorite color. He silently put some chakra in his feet and jumped lightly onto the bed and laid down. He pulled the covers over him. T's going to be tough, I don't have those mission thingies to test out the stuff I need to do. Wait a second, I was just being chased after, that could be my mission, get what I need to survive and get back to my apartment unnoticed. I will have to sneak around to listen in on ninja teachers on how to do all that cool jutsu stuff. Like they can transform into other people, replace themselves with stuff or even make a clone. The blonde boy rolled over and closed his eyes. Uzumaki Naruto, the next Hokage. He then drifted off to sleep in the unused house. The next day, Naruto woke up alone in the lonely compound. He pulled his sandals on and walked out to the back of the house. Surrounded by walls connected to the house was a garden with several open areas. Now what should I do now? He sat down cross-legged and closed his eyes, looking for all the times he watched ninja. He opened his eyes to stare at the wall. They can somehow stick to stuff that are sideways or upside down. Naruto walked towards the wall. He picked one of his legs up and put it on the wall. He forced his chakra into the bottom of his foot. Surprisingly to him, the foot stuck to the wall. The boy grinned and put his other foot on the wall. But the boy fell back head first into the soft ground with a grunt. Ow, not enough chakra. The blonde picked himself up and thought about his last attempt. I think I should start on the ground. Naruto laid down on the ground with his feet on the wall. He pushed a lot of chakra into his feet. But the wall crunched under his feet. The blonde sat up and saw there was a small hole in the wall. I guess too much. He moved over to a solid piece of the wall. He chose to put about half as much chakra into his feet. He cringed and his feet glowed blue. He took a step up the wall. He stuck to it, which made him glow with happiness. He slowly took another step up the wall and still stuck. He took a mental note at how much chakra to put into his feet and began running along the walls cheering. Meanwhile at the Hokage Tower, Sarutobi was glaring at the piles of paperwork in front of him. He hoped that if he stared at it long enough it would just disappear and nobody would ask questions. But that's what dreaming was made to do, and after an hour of staring he gave up and made a move to finish some of it off before another thought came to mind. I wonder what Naruto is doing about now. He looked around his lonely office and shut the blinds. He reached into one of the cabinets and pulled out a crystal ball. He focused some of his chakra into the ball and found the SPIKY blonde laying down sleeping in a clearing with flowers around him. It's good to know he is safe. I'm sorry about how this turned out, but I wish Minato got his wish. Sighing, the Sandaime put the crystal ball back in its place. He then stood up and opened the blinds while looking at the still huge pile of paper. He sat back down and stared at the piles of paperwork. Just once please work. Hence suddenly the pile got a little smaller. The old man wide-eyed and began doing the rest of his work in fear. Back with Naruto. Naruto was laying down with his legs crossed, hands behind his head, and his eyes closed. It was noon, he thought, with the sun directly over him. I have to become a ninja. I won't make it to 10 years old if I don't start now. The boy stood up, gathered some of his chakra to his feet and jumped off. He continued his long strides through the wind, feeling it go through his hair. I will be a great ninja. He continued his strides until he landed in a far too familiar district. It was filled with bars. Suddenly all eyes were upon him. I should have just kept going. But he felt something from around him. It was something eating away at them, all of their hate, disgust, how much they wanted to kill him. But the boy did not back down. He took his first shaky step and began walking through. I will not be afraid of these people. His blue eyes were filled with determination. He somehow made his way down the streets, his hands in his ragged pockets. His face clearly say, I am not afraid of you and there is nothing you can do to change that. He continued his death march through the streets. Everyone's disgusted looks at him met his eyes of sheer determination and willpower. He was not confronted, nor shouted at. He found the building he was walking to. He cringed, bringing more chakra to his feet, and began walking up the wall. Next to a window, then he turned so he was facing the ground. Naruto leaned back so his back was on the wall. He slid down so he was sitting on his heels. He brought more chakra to his ears and began listening. So class, we will be going over the henge today. A ninja teacher said. Naruto pulled out a pen and notebook and began writing things down about the lesson. Naruto took a quick look inside and saw the teacher put his hands together. Naruto, as fast as he could, drew the hand sign in his notebook. You have to think of the image in your head. Then you start molding your chakra in your stomach. Then you let it burst out. So it's called chakra. The teacher then disappeared in a puff of smoke and a figure of the Hokage stood. See, now you all try. Naruto watched as a whole bunch of people tried to turn into the Hokage. Most of them failed. Naruto leapt down and began running off to his new home. He was a small blur to the villagers he passed. They shrugged it off as one of the Inuzuka ninja dogs. Naruto jumped over the stores and houses and found the abandoned compound. He snuck into the house and locked the door behind him. He went over to the kitchen and found a bunch of foods. He pulled out some instant ramen and began to cook it. Instead of waiting the antagonizing 3 minutes for it to cool off, he pulled out his notepad. He looked over his fairly well drawing of the hand sign and the instructions. He put his hands together in the form of how it was in the picture. He felt his chakra was a little more solid. Not as flowing as normal, but labeled it as molding chakra. He pulled out an image of the Hokage and focused. He put everything around him out of the way and focused on the image. He compressed his chakra and let it burst out. A puff of smoke erupted from him and faded away. Naruto looked at his hands. They were old and wrinkly. He looked for a bathroom by stumbling around from his new height off of the ground. Naruto found the bathroom and looked into the mirror. He looked exactly like the Hokage. He smiled and screamed, "Yata." He was still focusing on keeping his chakra's current state before letting go. Another puff of smoke erupted from him. He then looked back into the mirror and found himself how he was normally. Naruto walked back out taking note of the huge tub in the bathroom. He began eating his ramen at peace in the lone house. When he finished he began to explore the house. It was pretty dusty so nobody must have lived here for a while. With it still outside he could make out the things much easier. He walked up the now quiet stairs. The spiky blonde made his way into the room he slept in the night before and looked at the contents. There's a lot of stuff in here, a whole bunch of weapons made of wood and weight. Naruto looked at a small billboard. "Welcome home Naruto," was written in kanji. The plaque had the same amount of dust on it than anywhere else in the compound. Naruto slowly walked up to the plaque. He gathered some chakra to his feet and walked up to the wooden board. It was written in red paint only a calligraphist would be able to do. There's no one else that I know whose name is Naruto. So this must be my family's house. He jumped off the wall and hit the ground running out the door. Naruto ran through the doors until he found a very large bed in the middle. At this point the blonde was crying as he walked gently across the room and sat on the bed. He looked around until he found the nightstand on the opposite side of the bed. Naruto crawled across the bed and picked up a picture. In it was a red-headed woman holding what seemed to be her pregnant stomach. Mom. Naruto stared at the figure taking in everything he could. He then noticed an arm was wrapped around the woman's shoulder. He followed the appendage to a man smiling, bringing her close with a smile Naruto thought he trademarked. The man had picky blonde hair longer than Naruto's with Junin clothes on like the other in the picture. Naruto's eyes shot open at the photo. No way, why Yondaime? Yondaime is my father. Naruto grabbed the photo of his parents and ran out of the house, locking the door behind him. He put so much chakra into his legs that he blasted off as a blue flash looking like a comet across the night. His mind crossed a very random yet beneficial memory. I remember Akunoichi was yelling at some guy with white hair and markings under his eyes. She was yelling at him for being a pervert, but the guy was slightly reluctant to apologizing. Then she said she was going to castrate him, then he was really scared and apologized profusely. In seconds Naruto found himself at the entrance to the Hokage Tower. Still carrying the picture, Naruto brought the appropriate amount of chakra and stuck to the side of the wall next to the staircase. He pulled the picture close to him and began sprinting along the wall to avoid going up the staircase. He sprinted past the receptionist, not even noticing he was there before a blast of wind hit her. He found the Hokage's door coming up and pulled chakra into his open hand, which became a fist. He found the door and jumped head on into it. His fist was flaring like a flame with the blue essence. The door never stood a chance. Naruto knocked the door off the hinges and the door flew inches past the Hokage's face before blasting out the window. Naruto rushed in with the most pissed off face he could muster. "Old man, if I had any idea what castrate meant I would do it right here, right now." Moments later an Anbu appeared and tried to apprehend the boy. But Naruto saw this and gathered more chakra into his fist. Naruto spun around to try and backhand the Anbu. The Anbu blocked it with his forearm, but it did not do much. The physical attack was stopped, but the chakra did not. It shot out of the back of the blonde's hand like a shotgun and blasted the Anbu into the wall. He fell unconscious moments later. To say Sarutobi was shocked was very much an understatement. Naruto just burst in here yelling that he was going to castrate me, then he actually take out an Anbu member. What he has to say must be really urgent. What is it, Naruto? The blonde's rage subsided into an extremely sad state. Water was practically pouring out of his eyes before Sarutobi saw Naruto was holding a picture. Why didn't you tell me about my parents? Sarutobi was now extremely surprised. Did someone tell him about his parents? No, that wouldn't explain the picture. Please sit down, he said calmly. Naruto slunk into the nearby couch staring at the picture tracing their faces. I am truly sorry about not telling you, but it was to protect you. Your father had an extremely high amount of enemies, and if they found out he had a son they would have came after you with no mercy. Naruto only nodded, still staring at the picture. Did they love me? The Hokage smiled at this. We're making progress, that's good. Naruto, your father and mother would have given their lives for you. When you were born your mother couldn't stop holding you. We had to give her an anesthetic to get you out of her grip. Naruto smiled thinking of her mother beating up nurses while still holding him. Well old man, I've never held a grudge and I don't plan on starting now, but you owe me big time. Sarutobi only sighed and nodded. What do you want? I want to live in my parents' house. Sarutobi nodded. Nothing wrong with that. And I want you to enroll me into the academy. This had Sarutobi surprised. Enrollment? Why start so early? I figured out that if I don't learn a whole bunch of ninja stuff I won't survive to 10 years old. Sarutobi let his head hang. That is true. These damn villagers can't tell the difference between a cup and the water in the cup, but this won't be as easy. That I have a slight problem with. If you start now you probably won't be able to keep up with the kids the proper age. Didn't I just take out the guy in the mask, or do I have to beat up a bunch more of those guys? At this Sarutobi chuckled, he's probably get 1 or 2 more down. What can you do at this time? Naruto smiled and put the picture down. He walked into the middle of the room and focused. He'd do something flashy but not too flashy. He focused his whole body became engulfed in a flame of chakra. Then Naruto let it die down. He turned towards the wall and walked up to it, not stopping. He started walking up the wall and onto the ceiling. He made a hand sign and his whole body was covered by a smoke screen. When the smoke dissipated there was an exact copy of the Hokage standing on the ceiling smiling. He's pretty good, plus his chakra has to be intense if he can blast it out and knock someone unconscious. The 4-year-old hopped down to the ground and undid the hinge. In front of him was a smiling Hokage. When would you like to start? The Hokage said, lighting his pipe. Then the small blonde boy was jumping off the walls making cheering noises. This had the old man laughing but crying in his mind. What have I done? Naruto landed in the same spot before saying, I want to start in 2 days. I need to get situated in my house. The Hokage nodded. I will come by tomorrow. Your father probably left some things that you will need my help to unlock. The blonde boy nodded with his smile still there. Thanks old man, he said. Naruto waved and jumped out the broken window with a small trail of chakra behind him. Then Sarutobi looked around. There was a small crater in the wall, an unconscious Anbu member, a missing door, and a huge hole in one of the window. Let the paperwork come, this will be entertaining me for a long time. The next day, Naruto woke up in the bed he slept in the night before, holding the picture of his parents as close as possible. He got dressed and walked downstairs, the house as lonely as ever. Then suddenly there was a knock on the door. He peered through the window and saw the Hokage. Good morning Naruto, he said smiling. Morning old man. Naruto opened the door more and let him in. This is a very nice place. Your parents were very humble, and they never were arrogant about who they were or what they have. Naruto smiled at the preaching of his father. All right, follow me, the Hokage said. The Hokage walked through the simple home like it was the back of his hand until he found a door with a slip of paper. In the middle of the paper was the kanji for blood seal. All right Naruto, this is a blood seal, Sarutobi said, pointing to the slip of paper. Blood seal? What is that? Naruto said while his eye widened. People use it so either them or their family members can open it. To open it you just smear a little of your blood on the seal and it will open. How do I get the blood? Naruto asked, still wide-eyed with the idea of seals only family members can use. All you have to do is bite your thumb and a little blood will trickle out. Naruto nodded and began biting at his thumb. Suddenly he broke the skin and small wave of pain was sent through him. Ow, the boy said, shaking his hand. Oh, to be young, the Hokage said with a light chuckle. Naruto smeared his blood on the seal on the door. The patterns and kanji glowed bright red before disappearing. Then the door was unlocked. Naruto slowly slid the door open before walking into the room. It had scrolls resting on cabinets set to hold them in place wrapped around the walls. The two looked around or they found an orange scroll resting on a small table. Naruto walked up to it and picked it up. On it was Naruto's name printed on the scroll in black. Keeping the down was another blood seal. With the wound was still open. Naruto smeared some more blood on the seal. The seal disappeared and the scroll was easily opened. There's nothing in here, the blonde boy said, looking at the blonde scroll. Then suddenly red lines began forming, they became more kanji writing a letter. Naruto began reading. Hello son, if you haven't noticed yet I am the Yondaime, your father. This scroll is supposed to answer yours and my questions to use is how I would ask them. My first question is how do the villagers treat you, good or bad? You'll be able to check off what your answer is below. First Naruto lie. The scroll down on the table and began reading through it. Silently the Hokage left the house leaving the boy alone. Then a checkmark box appeared with the kanji for good next to it while another formed with bad next to it. Naruto opened the wound a little, cringing at the pain. This is going to be a while. He smeared the blood on the bad checkmark. Then more kanji began appearing on the top of the scroll. Damn it. Those villagers are still arrogant idiots. I suppose I have to tell you why they hate you. Well, the Kyuubi no Yoko attacked the day you were born. I only had one option. I talked it over with your mother to do it. After many beatings and times of crying she finally agreed. When you were born she knocked out most of the nurses around her holding onto you. I had to give an anesthetic to stop her from choking you. Naruto laughed again with the recurring thought of the red-headed woman beating up several nurses. Well, I took you with me to the battlefield, I knew that. I had many enemies and I didn't think you could fight them all off. So I decided that I would seal Kyuubi in you. Naruto stared at the scroll amazed. How could I have Kyuubi inside me? I've never wanted to hurt anybody. I did my utmost best on the seal. If it worked then you probably haven't met Kyuubi unless you were in a life or death situation. Do not worry if you ever meet him, stand tall and don't show fear. I made the seal so in case of an emergency you can call on his chakra and it will go straight into your chakra coils. So how old are you? A large box appeared written in red. Naruto opened the wound again. This time it didn't hurt that much. He wrote 4 in the box and it disappeared. 4. Well, your mother is probably beating me to a pulp right now in heaven for not asking for that earlier. Remember that we will always love you. Oh well, so do you have any ninja skills right now? Naruto opened the wound and began writing. I just started using chakra a few days ago. I was being chased by a mob when I thought what would it be like if I was a ninja. Then I thought about how they run, I began running faster. Then I found my chakra, and put it in my feet. I speeded up really fast, and then I found our house. I feel really bad that you and mom are dead but this scroll thingy is okay. Anyway, when I found a picture of you two together I ran out of the house and went right for Sandaime. I ran up the staircase, brought chakra into my fist and punched through the door. The door went flying out the window right next to the old man's face. I said I was going to castrate the old man if I knew what it meant. Then some guy in a white mask and black clothes came out and tried to grab me. But I put some chakra into my fist and tried to hit him. He blocked it but the chakra blasted out and knocked him out. The blonde boy waited for a response as the blood seeped in. I'm so proud. A red picture of a crudely drawn Yondaime had tears coming out of his eyes with his fist in the air. A bubble appeared next to the figure said. My boy is 4 years old and is taking down Anbu. The picture faded away to more kanji. By the way, have you seen a white-haired man that looked like this? Under the kanji there was a picture of the perverted man. Yeah, that's him. The blonde quickly wrote down. His name is Jiraiya, he was my teacher. If the Hokage knows about you and me then he will probably get Jiraiya to help you with more advanced stuff in a few years. So are you going to join the academy? Naruto was smiling happily at his conversation with his father's scroll. I'm joining the academy tomorrow. I'm kind of nervous, they're all going to be older than me. Don't get nervous, just get strong enough to beat them. By the way, I can't tell what you look like, I can't tell if you look more like your mother or me. A red box appeared and Naruto began drawing his face from his spiky blonde hair to the grin he trademarked. The picture seeped into the scroll and his father's words began appearing. Hey, you look exactly like how I did with the whisker marks. Well, since you're starting the academy tomorrow I should probably tell you that the scroll case next to the door contains very easy to learn jutsus I got for you when you would get older. But they should work now. Oh, and since the villagers didn't be too nice to you when you checked that box, several seals around the house activated. It creates a barrier that will not allow anybody enter the compound without good intentions. Well, if you need to talk to me just reopen the scroll. Just remember that your mother and me are saw. That it turned up this way, but we will always love you. The writing on the scroll faded, which signaled Naruto to close the scroll. The blonde turned to the scroll case his father pointed out and walked over. He picked one of the scrolls up and read the title. The Genin exam requirements. Naruto took the scroll into the kitchen and placed it on the counter. He went to the cabinet and fished out more instant ramen. It was still the middle of the day, so he had lots of time to practice. He cooked the ramen, and while he waited, Naruto opened the scroll and began reading. In Konoha, a genin must be able to use 3 very basic yet effective jutsus. Henge, Kawarimi and Bunshin are these 3. Henge changes the person's outer appearance, Kawarimi lets the person substitute him or herself with an inanimate object to get out of the way of attacks. Bunshin creates a clone of the user, but in the past teachers will pass user who cannot perform the Bunshin but another kind of Bunshin. Bunshin is said for ninja with lower chakra levels but higher chakra control. If a user has high chakra levels, then in turn they have low chakra control. If the reader has high chakra levels, then it is recommended that they learn another kind of Bunshin. Naruto was now eating his instant ramen while reading the scroll. There are other kinds of Bunshin. I could probably outrun some ninja if I put a lot of chakra in my feet, so I guess I have lots of chakra. Then it would either take a lot of practice to try a Bunshin, or I can probably look in the scroll room for another kind of Bunshin. Naruto continued through the scroll, reading about the henge to grasp the basics, and found out that it doesn't require a lot of chakra control, just sheer focus and concentration. Kawarimi was not as easy. You had to attach a small line of chakra to the object, then you have to pull the object to you and you replace the object. You compress and expand the chakra like henge to create the smoke. Naruto took one of stools next to him and brought it outside. He placed the stool in one of the clearings. Naruto applied chakra to his finger and began letting the chakra stretch between his finger and the object. Naruto found out earlier that chakra is easier to manage if he makes a basic hand sign. Naruto, while still connected to the stool to work on his chakra control, compressed and expanded the chakra easily, and a puff of smoke came. He was pulled to where the stool was, and the stool was in his place. He screamed, "Yata," while running around. I have 2 of the 3 jutsus down to pass the genin exams. Naruto finally calmed down and dragged the stool back into his house. He retreated back into the scroll room, leaving the stool in the kitchen. He went back to the scroll case his father made for him and looked for more scrolls. He found one on something called taijutsu, and continued to look for Bunshin scrolls. None were in the section he was looking. He began moving down the scroll case, looking at many elemental jutsus. I'll have to check those out later. He was now really far away from the beginner's scrolls when he found one. Cage Bunshin. Naruto took the scroll to the chair and plaque the scroll down on the nearby table and opened it. Hey Naruto, this scroll I thought would have been perfect for you. Me and your mother mastered this jutsu easily because we both had high chakra levels. The jutsu is simple. You form this hand seal. Under the writing was a fairly well drawing of 2 hands crossed with the middle finger and index fingers pointed out. And almost fold your chakra. The more times you fold it, the more clones you get. When you folded it the number of times you wanted, expand the jutsu. A few puffs of smoke will appear around you. In those puffs of smoke will be Cage Bunshins. Naruto took the taijutsu and Cage Bunshin scrolls and walked outside next to a bench. Naruto formed the hand seals and began folding his chakra. He folded it about 3 times and let it expand. There were 3 puffs around Naruto. When the smoke cleared, there were 3 very pale and unconscious Narutos with swirls in their eyes. Naruto ran back to the scroll to see what he did wrong. I'm guessing the clones were very pale and unconscious. Yeah, your mother and I did the same thing. They have to be very crisp folds, you can't just roll it over. Try it now. Naruto walked over to the same spot when the clones disappeared on their own. He formed the same hand seal. He was now completely focused. If I want to become a strong ninja, I have to focus completely. Everything was blocked out. His mind was completely blank, just focused on folding the chakra. He folded it hundreds of times, all very crisp. Cage Bunshin no Jutsu. He expanded the chakra. The whole compound became filled with Narutos. All the Narutos screamed, "Yata," at the same time while pumping their fist into the air with the same grin on their faces. All of them dispersed and came back to the 4-year-old. He walked back to the scroll and read past the point he got to. I'm proud of where you are, you probably created your first cage bunchin' up to this point, whether you made 1 or 100 we will always be proud of you. As a gift in your room there is a blood seal in the closet, when you activate it some clothing that will fit you will pop out. It looks a lot like my battle clothes so you'll probably freak out the villagers. Make sure you're ready for whatever they will throw at you. I recommend you read the taijutsu scroll in the beginners section, it will help you with learning or creating your own taijutsu form. Naruto happily closed the scroll and grabbed the taijutsu scroll next to it. He opened that one and began reading. Taijutsu is basic martial arts for the common shinobi, it's ca.n range from learning how to emit chakra at the last second like the gentle fist style or extreme physical training to bash away at their bones. Naruto continued through the scroll learning the basic moves of all taijutsu forms. Then he got to how to create your own taijutsu form. Lots of forms of taijutsu were made to counteract other forms. If you create your own style then they will have to learn through the fight. Naruto recalled back to the time he said he was going to castrate the Hokage. Those guys in the masks are supposed to be really tough if they have to protect the old man. If I see and knock one of them out with my chakra then that's what I have to do. I have to create a style through that. Naruto took the scroll, gathered a lot of chakra to his feet and blasted off. I've been wearing these same clothes for the past few weeks, I should get those clothes that scroll told me to get when I'm strong enough. This should help me be strong enough to protect myself from those villagers. Naruto was just a blue comet from the chakra coming off of his feet in the middle of the day. Naruto continued over the rooftops until he came to the ninja training grounds. He found 3 posts next to some monument thing. Someone with white hair was standing there looking at it. He wasn't the guy with markings under his face, this guy had a mask that covered his mouth and nose. Naruto shrugged it off and began working on his new style. The scroll said that if you want to add chakra to your attacks it's good if your attacks come off spinning. Naruto put the scroll on one of the posts and stood in the middle of the clearing. It also said you should have smaller attacks and end the combo with a finishing move. Naruto brought some chakra to his fists, but just to the front. The chakra then began swirling around the front of the fist. Then his feet began to glow with the blue essence, doing the same thing. Naruto started with a step with his right leg leading his right fist and blasting out chakra. Naruto then spun around by sliding his left leg past his right, twisting him around with a back fist with his left hand, sending another chakra blast towards the invisible enemy. Still using the momentum, Naruto jumped in the air with his legs spinning around, blasting another intense chakra burst. Naruto landed facing the invisible enemy with both hands facing out on his chest. He stepped forward, thrusting both arms out, blasting chakra out. A huge torrent of chakra blasted out, much larger than the one he used on the Anbu. Unknown to Naruto, the masked ninja has turned his gaze to the blonde. He looks exactly like him, could he actually be his son? No, that was only 4 years ago. He continued watching the blonde blasting chakra out of his appendages. Still no one else has blonde spiky hair other than Inoichi, but not that shade of blonde. So that's him then. 4 years old and already learning a taijutsu style, or at least I've never heard of it. Naruto was continuing his combos, blasting out more chakra with yells after each strike. I have to become strong, I want the villagers to respect me, so I have to become the best of the best. Naruto jumped in the air and landed near a tree. He charged all the chakra in his body and blasted it out. The tree uprooted and flew back a few feet, toppled over. After the sudden realization, he was running around shouting that he has a new taijutsu style. The white-haired man was wide-eyed at the spectacle. He just uprooted a tree, the blast wave doesn't hit an initial spot, it engulfs the object and sends it flying back. He's got talent. But if he's like his mother then he won't like being called a genius. The man was sitting on one of the posts next to the post with the scroll on it. He picked the scroll up and began reading through it. He made his own style off of this, a beginner's scroll. Naruto turned around to read more about making new forms when he noticed the masked ninja. Hey, what are you doing? The ninja looked up, to see the blonde-haired boy looking at him. Oh, I was just looking through this scroll to see what was the name of that style you were using a moment ago. Good luck finding it in there. I'm making my own style, Datbeo. This guy seems alright, He hasn't called me demon yet, so he must have some kind of respect for me. Kakashi was slightly surprised at the blonde's answer. You made it on your own. How did you come across it? This should be interesting, the ninja thought. Well, I activated my chakra a few days ago, then for personal reasons I was really angry at the Hokage. I punched through the door. It went flying past the old man and out the window. That would explain the hole in the window, when I met the Hokage this morning. Then a guy with a mask and black clothes came out and tried to grab me. I put some chakra in my fist and spun around to hit him. He blocked the punch, but the chakra shot out of my fist and blasted the guy into the wall. This kid never ceases to amaze me. 4 years old and he already took out an Anbu member. You were able to take out an Anbu member. You're pretty tough. What do you plan on naming the style? The blonde went into a thinking pose. How about Chakra Pulse? Sounds good. Do you plan on joining the academy? Actually, I'm joining the academy tomorrow. I've been learning Henge, Kawarimi and Kage Bunshin to protect myself from the villagers and be able to pass the exam. He's driven to work for survival in his own village. This kid, he's already ready to become a genin. I hope I get to teach him. I swear sensei that I will protect him no matter what. I should probably tell Itachi if I see him about this kid. Well, good luck then in the academy. Who knows, maybe I'll be your sensei when you pass. My name is Hitaki Kakashi. My name's Uzumaki Naruto. The Junin smiled and disappeared in a puff of smoke. The Hokage Tower. The Hokage was finishing his paperwork with just a few more sheets when a puff of smoke appeared. The figure was reading an orange book and had his headband over one of his eyes. Kakashi. What are you doing here? I just ran into Naruto a few minutes ago. He was creating his own taijutsu style based on something you saw. The Hokage was now surprised before recalling last night's events. You mean when he knocked out that Anbu member with his chakra? Yes, and he has also mastered Henge, Kawarimi and Kage Bunshin, he told me. Hey, that boy will never cease to amaze me. Did he already tell you he's joining the academy tomorrow? Yes, and I am slightly worried on how they are going to teach him. The Hokage sat back with his pipe in hand. Do not worry, there is one teacher that I know that will not do anything. The class knows, yes, but he has taught morals and to not be afraid of Naruto. I only wish the other teachers had did that. He did say that he was learning those in case he needed to protect himself from the villagers. The Cyclops said from behind his book. The villagers I can barely stand, most of these papers call for his execution. The old man said, pointing to the outbox. Well, now he won't go that easily, I'm putting him in the beginning class. The students will be 3 years older than him, but they understand the difference of him and Kyuubi. Does he know about it? The white-haired man asked. I think he does, his father left him an interactive scroll. And he probably explained it and apologized profusely. Well, when he gets out of the academy, I want to be the one to teach his team. The man said, putting his book away. The old man behind the desk smirked. It's not like I have a choice, lots of senseis have grudges on the boy, and he's lucky that you're willing to help him. So I will contact you when he passes the exams. If he can already do the 3 exams jutsus, then he will probably be in there for a year. I'll warn you though, he'll probably prank you till the end of time if you become his sensei. Kakashi smiled behind his mask, saying, how much trouble can a 4-year-old be? If you say that, you haven't met the real Naruto. The old man smiled mischievously. The morning after, Naruto woke up in his rags he called clothes. I can't go to my first day to the academy in this, he said, pulling on his clothes. Wait, the scroll said, Dad left me some cool clothes in the closet. Naruto jumped out of bed and ran to the closet door. He slid it open and found a blood seal in the closet. Well, he thought it was a blood seal. It was different than the seals he encountered before. He bit his thumb and swiped it on the seal. There was a poof and a white coat and blue clothes appeared into existence. He smiled and slipped into the new clothes. Then he felt something in his pocket. He reached in and pulled out a scroll and opened it. That was called a summoning scroll. If you didn't know, you can find some scrolls on summoning in the scroll room. Hey, you probably look like a miniature me. I shall call him Mini-Me. The blond boy looked into the mirror and he looked exactly like his father plus whisker marks. The blue clothes had pouches on them for weapons and gear, but at the time he had none. So he grabbed his parents' picture and put it in there instead. He grabbed the notepad he had to listen in on the lessons and ran downstairs. The blond boy made more instant ramen and packed for his first day. When it was done he ate quickly and threw it out. He ran through the front door and locked it behind him. Naruto then jumped off with chakra in his legs. The blue blur speeded through the streets unrecognizable to the villagers. He slowed down when the academy was in sight. Now walking Naruto felt all the strange stares going at him. Then suddenly Naruto felt killing intent from behind him and it was getting closer. He spun around and ducked under a punch. Instinctively, chakra flew into the spiraling motion around his fist and went straight into the gut of the attacker. The man was blown back into a wall and slid down to the ground. He seemed to be some construction worker from the look of it. Everyone was staring at him with fear in his or her eyes. Quickly Naruto tried to calm them down. Hey, he attacked first. I was only defending myself, don't be afraid of me. I would never attack someone for no reason, but you saw him. Quickly Naruto looked down at his new watch. Crap, I'm going to be late. Naruto formed the simple hand sign for chakra control. Chakra began rotating around his feet. He blasted off down the street with wind flying behind him. He landed GHT next the academy with a gust of wind behind him. The Hokage was standing at the entrance to help him. Yo old man, he said waving. Right on time Naruto, but did you need that much of a destructive entrance? You know me. The blonde said scratching the back of his head. Let's get inside. The two walked inside of the small entrance to the academy. Now Naruto, these kids are 3 years old. Than you, but don't get worried, the teacher I'm assigning you to taught them the difference between you and Kyuubi and he says that they all treat you just as anyone else. Naruto smiled at the thought of normalcy. Thanks old man. The two continued their walk until they reached a door. The old man knocked on the door and Naruto decided to listen in. Okay class, here he comes, remember he is EU years younger than you, but none of you should underestimate him. There was loud, hi, and the teacher said, you may come in. The Hokage opened the door and the blonde walked in. The teacher had a gash across his nose and a brown spiky ponytail hair. He had a chunin vest and blue clothes under it like Naruto's. The blonde was met by a bunch of confused stares at him. Hey, my name is Iruka Yu. Mino, but you can call me Iruka sensei. Well, this is your class, would you like to introduce yourself? The blonde nodded and took a deep breath. Hey, I'm Uzumaki Naruto. Everyone replied a shaky, hi Naruto. And they quieted down for their teacher to talk. Okay Naruto, your seat is up there. Iruka pointed to a seat near the back. Naruto walked up the steps. He sat down next to a girl with markings on her cheeks like claws. She had tight gray short shorts. Also she had a gray vest with bandages wrapped around her forearms. On her right shoulder was a tattoo. Hi, I'm Hana Inuzuka, Naruto right? The blonde nodded dumbly. Aren't you a little young to be in the academy? I am, but I'm a lot tough than you think. Not too many people come to the academy early, especially if they're younger than 6. I've been in the academy for 2 years now, but I can only do Bunshin and Henge. Really, I can do Kawarimi, Henge and Kage Bunshin. You can really do all of that. Maybe you can help me with Kawarimi. Sure, I can help you. The blonde said smiling. Naruto, we're going to be testing your skills, so can you please step down? The teacher said, looking at Naruto. He nodded and jumped down to the floor. Okay, there are 3 jutsus that you have to learn to pass the exam, along with a written test and an accuracy test. The boy nodded. The first is Henge, put your hands together to make this hand sign. Then try to picture me in your head, compress and then expand your chakra and there will be a puff of smoke. The boy smiled and made the sign. Henge, he yelled. There was a puff of smoke and another Iruka appeared. Everyone, included the teacher, gasped. Hi. The other Iruka said in its own Iruka voice. Iruka gained his composure and stared at the copy of him as it disappeared into a smiling blonde. Well down Naruto, you may sit back down. He said, shaking. This kid could be the next Itachi Uchiha. Henge on his first try. Naruto returned to his seat next to the Hana. Wow, I guess you weren't lying. She said, smiling, showing her canines. The blonde grinned and turned to the teacher's lessons. 1 year later. Naruto trained, learning everything he can from the scarred teacher. His clothes remained the same like his father's but without the chunin vest. Him and Hana became a very successful team despite their age. She even developed a slight crush to the boy, just why? Ting a few more years when it would seem less weird. Naruto also befriended another student named Idate. He was okay but a little smug. Naruto said that smugness is going to bite him in the end. His B. Rother was supposed to be a tough chunin or something. Naruto has also grown more closer to the kids his age, especially Kiba, since his sister asked for help a lot at her house. Her mom does not care about Kyuubi but has teased Hana about her liking of the blonde prodigy. And Kiba is as oblivious as ever about this. The villagers backed off after his encounter with the construction worker and he only met stares of uneasiness instead. But his classmates all have respect for him in the highest regards. Naruto speeded through the scroll room learning his element, which turned out to be wind and other simple yet effective jutsus. With him, Hana's ninja puppies and Idate working together, they were able to skip a few years and were currently in the advanced classes of the academy. They don't treat him any better or worse because of who his father was or what was inside of him. Luckily he was too young for fangirls and he kept the same amount of funny smug as he had when he came to the academy. Iruka still teaches their classes but has grown closer to Naruto. They can usually be found having ramen at Ichiraku. The other teachers tried to slow Naruto down with harder tests but he ed them, making them all sulk in their corners. Today was the day of the exam and the three have been training relentless until they can do henge, kawarimi and a kind of bunshin in their sleep thanks to Yondaimi's scrolls. Alright Uzumaki, Naruto, come with me to the examination room. Iruka said holding a clipboard. Hana and Idate gave the thumbs up and he ran out of the room. Inside the room Iruka and another one of the teachers were testing the students. Alright Naruto, if you get this you will graduate in record time. Perform any kind of bunshin to pass. Naruto put his hands together and said, Kage Bunshin no Jutsu. 20 Narutos appeared. Damn it demon, why couldn't you just fail? The teacher said. He pulled out a kunai and went for the real Naruto before Iruka could do anything. Naruto grabbed the insane teacher's wrist and moved it out of the way. Naruto charged chakra into his fist and thrust it into the man's gut. He went flying back into wall, with a Naruto sprinting at him. He jumped and landed a finishing blow with his foot, blasting the chunin through the wall into the empty classroom on the other side. Naruto. Are you alright? Iruka said, worried. I'm alright sensei, can I have my headband? He said. The chunin began laughing. Close your eyes Naruto. He said. The blonde closed his eyes and felt something wrap around his forehead. Naruto opened his eyes and looked at his sensei. He wasn't wearing his headband. Congratulations Naruto, I'm proud of you. Naruto felt his forehead and felt cold metal instead. Naruto grinned widely. I'm a ninja. I'm a ninja. The blonde ran out of the room to the classroom. He ran up to his seat in between Idate and Hana. Guys, I'm a ninja. Congratulations Naruto-kun, Hana said, bringing him into a hug. Both really. Zing, what happened? Blushed before Idate said. I heard a bunch of loud noises from the other room. What was that? One of the teachers was angry that I passed and attacked me. I kicked him through the wall into the other classroom. Hana. Her dogs and Idate only sweat dropped at the smirking blonde. The next day. Luckily for the three, the teachers saw how well they worked together, so they put them on the same genin squad. They were waiting for their new sensei for an hour now and were as bored as ever. To provide as much entertainment as possible, Naruto stuck an eraser at the top of the door. But that was 20 minutes ago. The new construction ended up shooting the eraser at the door while dropping a bucket of water on their sensei's head, and then Naruto transforming into the Yondaime. I say we get a catapult. Idate said before they heard footsteps near the door. They all stared at the door until a hand appeared sliding the door open. It tripped the wire, which launched the eraser straight at the person's face. Naruto then performed the hand signs for henge. The man keeled over holding his face when another wire tripped, tipping the bucket of water over. The water splashed the man and the bucket landed covering head. The genin company was chuckling at the sight of the tricked Junin. Their sensei grabbed the pail and lifted it to see the pranksters. By now Naruto finished the henge and looked like the Yondaime. First impression, I sensei. The pail flew off the head over a silver-haired Junin as he fainted. Everyone was laughing at the sight of the now seriously tricked Junin. That was a good one Naruto. Idate said. Hana then said. Yeah hey, but seriously I think we should wake him up now Naruto-kun. Hana said, wiping the tears out of her eyes. The blonde boy nodded and somehow pulled another bucket of water out of nowhere. He splashed Junin's face with water. The Junin woke up to see a miniature Minato. Sensei. Close but I'm a little shorter. The blonde said smiling. Correction. First impression I loathe you. The three Genin's sweat dropped. A few hours later. After introductions, Kakashi-sensei said to meet him at their training grounds early in the morning. He told them not to eat the morning but they knew better. Since he told us not to eat, we'll all pack soldier pills. Hana said, pulling 2 packs out of her bag. She threw them both to Naruto and Idate, nodding. If I had to guess, he's going to give us another test. Those tests were way too easy and we are ninja. Idate said, putting them in his bag. We're all at least 4 years young. Gier than normal Genin, we have to stick together, if we don't we'll all crumble. Naruto said, following Idate's example. Let's go train now and rest up later. The Inuzuka said, receiving a nod from the others. At the Hokage's office, the old man was glaring at his paperwork once again in hopes of doing it again. Come on, what did I do before? This is excruciatingly painful. Then suddenly a puff of smoke appeared in front of the old man, having no effect of surprise. The figure turned out to have a mask and reading an orange book. Kakashi, what news do you have about our favorite blonde? Sandame said, lighting his pipe. Well, I just met him and his team. Yes, they did prank me and got me good, as a matter of fact. Hey, what did he do to you? He shot an eraser at my face, dropped a bucket on my head and hanged into Yondaime. Quote. The old man chuckled at his misfortune. He is a little violent with his pranks, but if you get closer to him he'll ease up on the pranks. So why Naruto, and Inuzuka, and Ibiki's little brother? The masked man said behind his book. They already work like they can hear each other's thoughts. I wouldn't be surprised if they were working up strategies to face you tomorrow right now. They're like a well-oiled machine when it comes to teamwork. All of them are fast, strong and smart because they help each other. Kakashi actually put his book away to hear more. They're not even Genin and they can work together that well. They were the youngest when they graduated, so naturally they work together. Plus I have seen Hana stare at Naruto a few times when she thought he wasn't looking. Interesting, I'll see what they can do tomorrow morning. And with that, Kakashi disappeared in a swirl of leaves. He's not coming back alive if he doesn't stay focused. The Hokage said, taking another puff of his pipe. The next morning, the three arrived together at the meeting place. Damn it, we have to wait another 45 minutes. Naruto said, cracking his fists. Well, let's get to building that catapult. Idate said. The three nodded and began to disperse when their sensei arrived. After what you did to me, I'm not letting any of you have time to construct new torture for me. The three giggled lightly before letting him continue. Since you are going to part of my team, I decided that I would conduct my own examination to test your skills. The Genin sighed but nodded after. Kakashi was slightly surprised by their simple answer. We kind of knew that you were going to test us on your own, so we were practicing yesterday to fight you. Well, gee. Good choice, because basically that's what you'll be doing. Kakashi reached into his ninja pouch and pulled out 2 bells attached to strings. You will be fighting me to get one of these. I want you to come at me with the intent to kill. Kakashi tucked the rope into his belt and crossed his arms. The three Genin nodded to each other and all pulled out radios that wrapped around their necks. They all got into fighting stances. Naruto's appendages began glowing and began pulling chakra out, and it began swirling around his fists and feet. His fists were brought up near his face, his right leg forward facing Kakashi. His left was behind him. Both feet were resting facing his left side, the same as his chest. Hana crouched down with both hands supporting her with her 3 puppies in front of her, growling. Idate unattached his leg weights and threw them over near the trees of the forest, getting into a stance like Naruto's but bouncing ready to move at any moment. Kakashi put an alarm clock on one of the posts nearby. You have until noon to get the bells. Each of the Genin reached into their pouches and pulled out soldier pills. They popped them into their mouth, making sure they give one to each of the dogs. Their chakra flared out of their bodies and receded back to a slight glow. They're smart. They didn't eat anything but still got the necessary nutrition from the soldier pills. They are a well-oiled machine. But how did they actually fare in battle? Ready, set, go. Kakashi yelled. Idate flew up with first punch. Kakashi was able to dodge by hopping back. Idate continued his combos, distracting the Junin, while Hana, her dogs and Naruto began racing up the field towards them. Naruto made a hand sign and yelled, Kage Bunshin no Jutsu. Then 5 clones appeared behind Naruto. Idate managed to make Kakashi jump in the air to dodge a sweep kick. The Narutos grabbed hold of the Junin's arms and legs while the others run up. The dogs all bit down on his appendages while Hana went for the bells. Just before Hana reached the bells, the body of their Junin sensei was engulfed in white smoke before becoming a chopped-up log. The 3 landed facing each other. Channel 2. Naruto said, changing the frequency of his radio. The other 2 nodded and the 6 of them jumped off into the forest. The masked Junin came out of the bushes back into the clearing, arms folded. That was really close, they could have taken my arms off with those teeth. I wonder what they're planning now. Then suddenly 3 blurs came out of the forest charging. The masked Jun jumped back and grabbed one of the blurs. It's one of those dogs. The 2 other blurs attached themselves to the man, knocking him down. Then there was some rumbling at his feet and a yellow blur appeared and grabbed both of his legs. Then something flew right to his head and held a kunai to Kakashi's neck. Hana now! The blonde yelled. Suga erupted from the ground below the masked man. Right next to him a spiraling gray blur came out of the ground and grabbed the bells from the mont's belt. Hana appeared holding the bells and passing one to Idate. The man held to the ground smiled behind his mask and said, "You pass." Several days later, Team 4 has been doing the same mission over and over again for the past few days. Chase and capture the daimyo's wife's cat. It's harder because, say Hana had her dogs barking at the red blur but caught it nonetheless. They even began running a contest against the other teams to see who would catch it first. It was like the hunt but with ninja and cats. Their teamwork only grew since they had scheduled training and a sensei to tell them what they did wrong. Naruto still brought a few of his dad's scrolls with them to training so they can work on more advanced jutsus. Many times they requested to have mock battles with the other teams, which only 2 others completed. They won every time and even helped out the other teams when they grudgingly accepted. Soon the Chunin exams began coming up and Kakashi called them on a meeting about it. They arrived to see their Junin sensei reading his orange book. "Hey, just to let you guys know, I signed you up for the Chunin exams. I think you all will do good in it." Kakashi then handed each of them a paper. "You have to sign these and hand them in at the academy on Friday at 3 p.m. Dismissed. Their sensei disappeared in a whirl of leaves. They looked at the papers and looked at each other. "What do you guys think?" Naruto said, looking for their answers. "I say we do it, we have the most powerful teamwork attacks. We can blow away the competition." Idate said. "Idate's right, if we all work together we can blow away the competition." Hana said, putting her hand on Naruto's shoulder, making him smile. "Thanks Hana, I needed that." Naruto said, pulling out his foxy grin. "I need to pick up a few things at home if we're going to go in the Chunin exams, alright." Naruto added, waving to his friends. When Naruto was finally out of earshot, Idate turned to the Inuzuka girl and put a knowing grin on. "What?" she asked, petting one of the 3 puppies. "So when are you going to tell him?" Idate said, smiling. Hana immediately blushed crimson red. "Please don't tell him, I want to be the one to tell him." Hana said, poking her index fingers together. It's alright, I find it kind of hard not to like him. I want to wait till it seems less weird to ask him." She said, smiling at her 2 fingers. "It's perfectly fine if you don't stare at him when we're in a fight." She nodded and went back to petting the puppies. Naruto's house. Naruto just entered his own house and made a beeline for the scroll room. He walked in and went for orange scroll in the middle of the room. He rolled it open and kanji began forming. "Hey Naruto, it's been a little bit." Naruto bit his thumb and began writing. "Yeah, anyway, I became a ninja a few days ago and my sensei just gave me a permission slip for the Chunin exams." "You're in the Chunin exams? How long have you been a genin? And who's your sensei?" "I've been a genin for a few days and some guy named Kakashi." "Kakashi's your sensei? Hahaha. I was his sensei, he probably wanted to teach your team." "Wait, you've been a genin for a few days? Well, congratulations on becoming a genin. Now listen closely, under the chair is scroll I left especially for you. I favored using this jutsu a lot and I made it myself." "Okay, I'll take a look at it. See you dad, I'll talk to you after the exams." "Alright, remember this, teamwork should be favored over everything in the exams. Never forsake your friends for anything." "Okay, I'll see you later." And Naruto closed the scroll and went under the chair. There under it was a red and light blue scroll. Naruto fished it out and shone it into the light. Rasengan. Naruto put the scroll in his ninja pouch and went around collecting scrolls on wind ninjutsus for him, taijutsu for Idate and tag team jutsus for Hana, and ran back out of the house. A few days later. It's a day away from the exams and Team 4 is training like no tomorrow. Naruto has been learning wind jutsu and the strange Rasengan. It was like one of his chakra pulse punches. But with a lot more kick. Idate's doubled his leg weights and is moving at insane speeds. Also learning taijutsu styles originating from clan techniques. Hana and her ninja puppies began learning more of her clan's techniques along with new jutsu from Yondaimi's scrolls. She also taught Naruto and Idate how to understand them. Tomorrow was Friday and they are just finishing their training. Phew, that was tough. I don't think I've never trained so hard. Idate said, panting. Well, we've never taken the Chunin exams before, but I'm guessing that it will be tough, so I'm glad we did. Naruto said, panting as well. Yeah, but we all got to work together. It's either we all pass or all fail. Hana said, sitting down to breathe. That's going to be easier said than done, but we'll try. Naruto said before the other two nodded. Hey Naruto-kun, can I talk to you? Hana said, waving him over. Well, I got to go, see you guys tomorrow at the academy. Idate said, waving and running off. Naruto walked over to her as both of them sat down. I know this will be kind of random, but I need to ask you. In a few years, when our age difference doesn't matter, would you go out with me? Naruto stared at the Inuzuka in disbelief. After all the stuff you know about me, you still want to go out with me? Hana nodded. Naruto thought for a moment before smiling a warm smile and saying, of course I would go out with you. You're all right with waiting the few years. In an instant Hana tackled the blonde, hugging him. I would wait forever for you to go out with me. Before Naruto could say anything, Hana kisses him on the lips for no longer than a second. I have to go now, bye. Hana got up, helping Naruto up with her, and she ran off with her gray puppies close behind. Naruto felt his lips and thought, why do I have to 3 years younger than her? Naruto walked back, wishing that if he was just a little bit older, the date would have happened immediately. The next day, it was 2:45 and all the members of Team 4 walked into the academy. Walking up and around the staircases, passing some group circled around a door. They finally entered the room where there sat about 20 other genin. Quietly they walked over to the wall to the right of the door and leaned against it and began strategizing. Okay, I suggest we split up the Heimaru siblings, that way we all have a good sense of smell and an extra pair of eyes in case we get split up. Hana suggested. The three nodded and took one of the puppies and put it on their head. Remember, either we all pass or we all fail, we all need each other. Naruto said. Then suddenly a voice erupted from the front of the room. All right, everyone, shut up. 1 hour later, the 3 members of Team 4 sat in anxiety for the 10th question. They were separated and each one of them had one of Hana's ninja puppies on their head. They had to sit in a classroom and steal the answers while not being noticed, and now were waiting for the 10th question. Let me just say now that the question has some drawbacks. You can choose to quit now and play it safe. But if you choose to answer the question, then one of your team mates will fail and never become Chunin. Raise your hand if you want to wait till next year. The 3 kid genin looked around until they found each other and nodded. Shakily all 3 of them raised their hands and walked out. Only one other group did this as well. They walked down with their heads hung until they opened the door. Each of the failed participants filed out and closed the door. Just when they were about to walk back out, a voice came from behind them. You all chose well, you pass. The 6 turned around to see Idate's brother smirking at them. Wait, what? You're going to have to run that by me again. Naruto said, confused. The scarred man's smirk grew and pointed inside of the classroom. They all looked in and began listening in. Well, since no one looks like they're about to quit, it look like you all fail. There was an outburst in the room when the Ibiki in the classroom erupted into a white smoke and disappeared out of existence. The 6 genin turned to the proctor in the hallway and he said, since there are only 2 teams left, we will have to skip the 2nd exam and go to the 3rd. In 1 month, come to the stadium in the middle of the village. There you will compete in one-on-one fight between the 2 teams. We'll explain more later, but now you're free to go. The opposing genin team was 2 boys and 1 girl. One of them had their headband wrapped around their head like a bandana with a few locks of hair sticking out the middle. He had a turtleneck long-sleeve shirt with a blue stripe circling the arms. The other had a swollen nose and 3 band ages with one on his chin and the other 2 on his cheeks. He had 2 large kunai on his back. The girl though had purple hair with a black t-shirt with a brown skirt and fishnet wrappings around her legs. She also had a necklace made of wood around her neck with a sullen look on her face. The boy with the bandana headband spoke. "Aren't you kids a little young for the Chunin exams?" he said, pointing to them. "So," Idate said. "So why are you trying to become Chunin?" The blonde kid looks like he's 5. "I am 5 years old." The 2 genins' eyes widened as they stared at the mini Yondaime. Naruto smiled widely, making the purple-haired girl's eyes widen. "See, can I talk to you alone?" she asked him. The rest of the group turned to stare at her before Naruto nodded dumbly. The 2 walked further from the group and stood near another door. "You're the kid with the kyuubi sealed in him, right?" The blonde nodded once again. She leaned against the wall looking down. "How are you so happy?" "I would have broken by now if I had to go through that for my whole life." "Not that I don't now." Naruto looked up to her with a questioning and amazed look on his face. "My first sensei was a bad pers. He left the village with me and he betrayed me. Now everyone treats me badly, maybe as bad as you. How are you at all happy?" "I'm miserable," she said. Naruto looked down and leaned against the wall beside her. "I guess to tell you the truth, I'm not really happy all the time. I just happen to smile a lot so the people I care about don't worry about me." "Don't you have someone that you care about?" The girl turned to him and stared before looking down to think. "The Hokage, I guess." Naruto smiled lightly and said. "Me too, the old man has done a lot for me, also my teammates. And when I think about them it just makes me smile sometimes." The girl thought for a moment before smiling widely herself. "I guess you're right, thanks." Naruto nodded before being captured in tight hug from the girl. She let go still in her smile. "I'll see you around," she said before walking back, eventually followed by Naruto. The 2 genin of Team 4 looked confused at Naruto. "It's all right, she just needed to ask me something." "Then why did she hug you?" Hana asked. Naruto thought for a moment while blushing and scratching the back of his head. She needed one," he asked. Hana narrowed her eyes. "Fine," she said, crossing her arms. Naruto turned to see the other team walking away. "Oi, I didn't catch your names," he yelled. They turned and the bandana headband wearing ninja said, "I'm Kamizuki Izumo." The bandaged ninja then said, "I'm Higane Katetsu." The purple-haired girl pointed dramatically at them before yelling, "I'm Mitarashi Anko, you better watch out before I kick all your asses." The other 5 sweat dropped and the team walked out, followed by Team 4. A few minutes later, the 6 genin ran out of the academy with an angry mob of genin behind them. Obviously they were not happy about coming all the way to Konoha to be kicked out in the first round, and that did not sit well with the rest of them. After a few short waves between the ninja they split up, which split the mob up too. They darted through the streets, weaving in and out of alleyways until they found Naruto's house and walked in. "This is your house. Wow, it's pretty big," Idate said, letting his eyes wander the inside of the building. "Yeah, I just need to do something quick, guys," Naruto said before retreating to one of the rooms nearby. Naruto walked into the scroll room and opened his favorite scroll. "Yo Naruto, how did the exams go?" The kanji read. The blonde bit his thumb and began writing in the space below. "I passed the first part of the exam." He said that if my team tried to answer the 10th question and got it right, then one of us would remain a genin forever. If we got it wrong, then we all remain genin forever. But we all quit early when he asked. We walked out and the real guy was standing out there. He said we didn't have to do the second part of the exam, and we had 1 month until the third part. The blood seeped in and his father formed a response. "That is pretty lucky that you don't have to do the second part of the exam. That has the most casualties out of the whole exam. How many teams are left?" Naruto then began writing more kanji into the scroll. "I meet the other team we will be going against." The girl seemed really depressed before I cheered her up. "Well, I'm proud of you and always will be. Anything else?" Naruto thought for a moment before he began writing. "One of my teammates is Hana Inuzuka. She's 3 years older than me, but yesterday she asked me if I would go out with her when we get older." Naruto let his statement seep in before more kanji began coming in. "An Inuzuka. Interesting." Well, when the time comes tell me how it goes. Anything else? Nope, that's it. I'll talk to you after the exams and I'll keep a lookout for that Jiraiya guy. Alright, see you later. And Naruto rolled up the scroll and placed it on the table just in time to see his teammates and the puppies walk in. So this is your dad's scroll room. Wow, it's pretty big. Idate said, looking around. What's that? Hana said, pointing to the scroll Naruto put down moments ago. My dad left me this scroll. It is like an interactive scroll. If I begin writing stuff into it, things my father would say would come out cool, huh? The two others nodded and began looking around. There are a lot of elemental jutsus here, huh? Hana said, looking at the scrolls. Naruto nodded and walked over to a drawer. He opened it and pulled out 3 slips of paper. He passed them to his teammates while explaining. These slips of paper are called elemental paper. If you put chakra into them, you can figure out what is your element. And with the help of these scrolls, we can learn a bunch of easy techniques. Just force a little chakra into them and I'll tell you what element you have. The two nodded and cringed for a moment. Hana's crumbled into rock, while Idate's scrunched up. Hana, yours is earth, and Idate, yours is lightning. Mine is wind. Naruto walked around the room grabbing random scrolls and piling them up in his arms until he couldn't see over them. He walked like a drunkard until he found the table in the middle of the room and set them all down. Why don't we split up for trainin'? Gee, this month so we can all focus on learning techniques. Idate said to the others. Do you guys mind? I do have a jutsu that my father gave me specifically. Naruto said. I'm okay with it. I should probably ask my mom to help me with my clan's jutsus. Hana said, scratching her dog's heads. So it's decided then, we'll all train separately until the day of the exams, alright? The 3 nodded. Yo. You guys could use the scroll room if you like, just don't open the interactive scroll please. The other 2 nodded and smiled. Naruto helped them seal their scrolls into containment scrolls and they left with a wave. Naruto sighed and kicked his feet up on the table after he sat down. He lifted his right hand up and made the chakra flow around it and eventually become a spiky ring circling it. Wah! Do I have to learn to pass the exams? Naruto tried speeding it up and slowing it down to work on his chakra control. Chakra pulse is effective, but it's not a knockout punch. The blonde then dead to just let go of the chakra and it burst out. What about defense? I got nothing in case they have stronger attacks than I thought. Naruto took a hand and glided it over his stomach. Kyuubi. Naruto got up and began walking past the scrolls looking for a history scroll. He was never one for history, but when you have a kitsune sealed in you it sometimes changes you a bit. He eventually found a red and black scroll that seemed to be collecting more dust than all the other things. On it read in kanji, the Kyuubi no Kitsune. Naruto took it out carefully and gingerly put it down on the table. He opened it carefully and began reading, determined to finish it by tomorrow. The next day, the sun was just peeking over the trees of Konoha, reaching everything present. The sunlight passed through the window of the Namikaze home and reached the eyelids of its sole resident. Naruto opened his eyes to see he fell asleep on the scroll he was reading. He finished the scroll the night before and went out like a light the moment after. The Kyuubi happened to be a very interesting topic. Indeed, the fox did cause the boy much grief, but he must say that he did not want to get into a fight with it without it sealed. If there was one thing that Naruto found interesting, it was that the Kyuubi would have done anything to stay alive. He was driven to never give up and die. So coincidentally, if Naruto found a good reason he could get the Kyuubi to help him out, he could become insanely strong. There was only one problem though, the seal. His father did a damn good job on the seal, he could tell. From the Yondaime's notes scribbled onto the scroll as tidbits. The Kyuubi's ability was just raw power. That might not sound impressive at first, but that is until you can tell how much that means. If you convert raw chakra into pure chakra, you should hope that you don't get in the way. So if he was able to learn how to control Kyuubi's chakra or make his chakra like the Kyuubi's, the question becoming Hokage is just, how old are you? Naruto furrowed his eyebrows. He had to crack the seal though to allow it, and that could only happen through an overflow of powerful emotions. For example, the death of a friend, that was a problem. He didn't want any of his friends to die, but to protect his friends with that power. No, he wasn't talking about obtaining power like some of the Uchiha do. He's had them in his classes and some of them were okay, especially the girls. Naruto happened to be pretty popular being a prodigy, but he did not let them get away with calling him that. Hell, he would still be in the academy if it wasn't for some help from Hana and Idate. But still, all that raw power, he could defeat his enemies by looking at them. That would be awesome. But as he finished thinking, he sat up and set out. Maybe he could get lucky and have something else happen that can trigger it. Naruto was just about to open the door to take a walk when he opened it. Stood a man clad in Junin armor with his hand was up as if to knock on it. The weird part to Naruto was that this guy seemed to be around 11 years old. He had jet black hair that opened up from the mid-lip, making his headband's insignia shone easily. He also had two dark onyx eyes looking with a surprise of the door opening early. The two stared at each other for a few moments when Naruto said, hi. The boy was snapped out of his stupor and put on a caring face. Hello, Uzumaki. Naruto, right? Naruto nodded. Well, I'm Uchiha Itachi. A light went off in Naruto's head about the name. Wait a sec. I remember that name from somewhere. Naruto put his hand to his chin and began thinking of the possible times he's heard of the name. Naruto opened his eyes and said, wait a sec, Kakashi-sensei saw. It's something about me beating you in graduating time, right? Itachi nodded. Yeah, you beat me by 2 years. He said, closing his eyes with a bigger smile. Naruto took this time to examine his outfit better. Why are you in Junin clothes? You look like you're around 11 years old. He said. Itachi opened his eyes and with a slight smirk decorated on his face. Well, that's because I am Junin. Itachi released his smirk to talk in a slightly more taking charge voice. I remember that last year you actually were able to knock out an Anbu member. Both smirked inwardly at that specific memory. Itachi remembered all the severe training and teasing that guy was put through. Most of the jokes was sending the guy to the academy. Tenzo was pissed after that and swore vengeance to the young blonde paid tenfold. And I wanted to meet you firsthand as a fellow kid. He finished. Naruto and Itachi's eyes also narrowed together since seemingly everyone who graduated at around normal age calls them kid, kiddo, youngster, and many other things. Well, thanks, I'm glad someone acknowledges my work. Naruto said, grinning. Itachi grinned back. Naruto, still holding his smile, said, well, thanks Itachi-san, I'll see you later. I have to go train for the Chunin exams. That caught the Uchiha's attention and caught the door as it was closing. Whoa, the Chunin exams. As in the Chunin exams. Yeah, all the other genin were failed except me and another group, so they're skipping right to the third part of the exam. Something wrong? Oh, nothing, Itachi said, but on the inside, he was crying fake tears saying, this kid is showing me up in all my records. The Uchiha then paused for a moment and then asked, hey, how would you like some training by me? Naruto's eyebrow rose and he said, really? Itachi then said, sure, why not? Naruto immediately erupted in a huge smile. He closed the door and was immediately shouting for Itachi to catch up or he would be left behind. For a Jinchuriki, he seems too energetic even for a normal person. Training grounds. The two underage ninja appeared in a lesser used training ground. It was a field circling trees with a few trees appearing in the middle and a river running straight through it. All right, kid, Naruto growled at Itachi as he said that, making Itachi snicker lightly. Show me what you got. Itachi though put one hand on his sword, though other than that he stayed motionless. Naruto, being about 15 feet away, jumped back and began going through hand seals and raised his right hand, bringing his thumb and index finger together and blowing through it. Futon. Datapa. Itachi watched without his Sharingan as the wind began to pick up from his hand and then see a strong gust the size of a house go flying towards him. Itachi took his hand off his sword and in a single moment went through the hand seals for his jutsu and slammed his hands on the ground. Doden. Doro Geishi. Itachi watched as a rectangle of the soil in front of him separated itself from the rest of the dirt and rise up. The last thing Itachi saw was the gust of wind only 5 feet away as the barrier took the blow. The rock began to crack on the outside and the sides began eroding from the wind. The wind began to die down. Itachi was just about to look around the wall when a burst of chakra blasted through the wall, revealing Naruto with his fist extended and flying through the wall. Itachi saw the move and began to wonder what the genin just did as Naruto came forward with another strike. Itachi ducked low and silently activated his 3-tomo Sharingan. He saw the chakra well up in Naruto's fist and be forced out of the tenketsu in his hands, earning a single eyebrow to raise. From this crouched position Itachi pushed his center of gravity back, catching the ground below him with his hands and have him thrust towards Naruto feet first, blasting him in the gut. Naruto was blasted back through the hole in the wall and kept sailing. Itachi deactivated his Sharingan and using the momentum of his feet to swing forward and land on his feet. The Uchiha looked up to see a still flying Naruto smirk and slap his hands together. Futon. Repusho. Naruto pulled his open hands back to his chest and thrust his arms forward. 2 blasts of wind flew forward through the hole and towards Itachi. Itachi only had a second and began to rotate back. Except Itachi's left hand was hit by one of the wind strikes and blasted the arm back, making Itachi lift off the ground in a spinning heap towards one of the inner trees. Naruto, while this occurred, swung his feet back and landed on one of the outer trees with a crunch. Naruto grunted as the force stung his legs for a moment and he dropped to the ground on his hands and knees. Naruto looked up to see Itachi flying into a tree and at the last moment caught himself when one of the hands and span the other way to land on his feet. Naruto, taking this time for action, jumped up, Produ Ced a kunai, and began sprinting towards the fallen Junin. Itachi looked up from his landing to see Naruto running full speed with kunai. Itachi immediately reacted and took the sword on his shoulder off just in time to block the vertical strike. The two stood poised with both blades grinding against each other. Itachi took this time to speak. "Very good, Naruto, you are very well Chunin material. Maybe I should stop giving you all these freebies." Itachi smirked as Naruto growled, but then Itachi angled his blade so Naruto's kunai slid down to the edge. Itachi pulled his sword back and sliced at Naruto's cheek. The Uchiha expected to see blood but was taken off guard when he disappeared in a puff of smoke. A shadow clone. Itachi turned towards the crippled wall to see the real Naruto jump up from behind the wall and charge yet again, this time with a fist back ready to release another slug of chakra when Itachi did a few hand seals. Naruto skidded to a stop when Itachi called out, "Kaden, Hausenka no Jutsu." A barrage of small fireballs escaped Itachi's mouth and flew towards Naruto. Naruto dodged the first few by skidding to the left, the next by jumping to the right. Then the Saint wave was a much more complicated form. Insert slow motion camera now. Naruto only threw his head back doing a matrix to dodge the first two. Naruto looked down to see another go under him from the heat, almost lighting his battle coat on fire, and another graze his left shoulder. Naruto hissed in pain as the fireball slightly burned his shoulder, thankful that it didn't set his coat on fire. Slow motion release. And Naruto dropped to the ground not very dramatically. Naruto gripped his shoulder in pain and looked up to see the sun being eclipsed by Itachi's form with his sword drawn. Naruto, getting a boost of adrenaline, momentarily forgot about his burning shoulder, rolled on his good shoulder and using his arm strength to push away. Naruto flipped his legs under him and landed on the round feet first to see Itachi land gracefully on the ground, already doing more hand signs. Naruto looked to his shoulder to see a burnt hole in his coat to reveal his healing skin. The blonde looked back to see Itachi say, "Kaden, Gukaku no Jutsu." A much more massive fireball was conjured and shot towards Naruto. Itachi watched as the fireball seemed to engulf the blonde and got slightly worried. The fire dissipated to reveal a charred log and Naruto's battle cloak thrown to the side. Itachi looked back over towards the small forest with the river and deduced Naruto must have taken shelter in there. Naruto was indeed taking refuge in the trees and leaning up against a high branch, holding his shoulder, panting. His healing factor was doing well, but a Biju can only do so much. Naruto reached into his pouch to pull out a healing ointment and a bandage large enough for the wound. Naruto was right now in the standard blue sweatpants and sweatshirt. You could see ninja walk around in Konoha with the arm, wrist and shin protectors his father had as well. Naruto gingerly put the cream on and kept his mouth shut from even growling at the risk of letting Itachi know where he was. Naruto sighed inwardly. Itachi was in no way, shape or form a pushover. He was rightfully deserving that Junin gear he was wearing at the time. The blonde slid the patch over the now healing burn and pat it down to make sure it wouldn't fall off. Naruto dared himself to look down from the branch and almost gasped when he saw Itachi just standing there. Naruto then began thinking of some kind of plan to cause a distraction so Naruto could at least get out of the trees. Naruto got as far as making cage buncheons for Itachi to chase after when suddenly he felt something brush against his right shoulder. It felt like air, but it wasn't constant like a wind, it was more like panting. Naruto now had the idea that someone was looking at him from 3 inches away. Slowly Naruto turned his head to see Itachi with a flashlight under his chin like he was some kind of old monster movie. Say, "Boo!" Naruto screamed and immediately left off the branch to the left. While flying back, Naruto turned to see Itachi chuckling. Naruto only smirked when he took a deep breath. Itachi finished his chuckling and looked up to see almost the exact same picture before. Naruto, now filled to the brim with air, began gather chakra into his lungs. His right hand stretched out and Naruto said, "Futon, Renkuden," and Naruto slammed his right hand down on his chest and a burst of air escaped the blonde's mouth. Edic. His eye widened and had only a second to dodge the ball of concentrated wind the size of a basketball. Itachi jumped to the far edge of the branch and turned to see the side of the tree he was near be blasted and taken a huge chunk out of by the compressed air. Itachi turned to look at Naruto just as he repeated the action twice more. The Junin jumped up to a branch above him, just missing the 2 projectiles hit the branch, destroying it. Itachi looked again to see him make one final projectile much larger than the other's head right for him. There was a large explosion and Naruto could see Ida Kai be blasted away, only to see him poof into a mutilated log. Naruto landed on a far branch and began looking around frantically for his opponent. His attention was pulled to the nearby river where he saw Itachi doing hand seals and say, "Suigen, Suigaden." 5 small whirlpools were created around Itachi. Out of them came torrents of water in the form of a drill and headed towards Naruto. The blonde made a hand sign and yelled, "Kage Bunshin no Jutsu," and there was a puff of smoke that erupted. Out of it came 20 Naruto clones. At the same time they all jumped out of the way of the dry LLS and began separating around the forest. All the clones when landed jumped off towards the Uchiha. Several clones were taken out by the drills, but the rest were now very close, causing Itachi to stop the jutsu. Itachi took out his sword and began cutting through the clones. 5 clones later Itachi was getting tired and decided to end it. Itachi activated his Sharingan and flew into the air. He floated in the air sheathing his sword and taking out some kunai. Itachi turned upside down and began to focus. A moment later he set the kunai out on the clone massacre. Kunai, after embedding themsel vase into clones, became walls for other kunai to bounce off into other clones. Naruto was hiding behind a tree hearing his clones be destroyed one at a time, but that wasn't what was scaring him. He could remember dying. Images of kunai being embedded into his arms, legs and torso flooded his mind. They must be my clones' memories. Naruto was cut short of his thinking when he saw 2 kunai collide into each other in front of him. Then one of the kunai were redirected towards his face. Naruto in a split second dropped to the ground, allowing the kunai to be embedded into his head's previous location. Naruto was just about to jump out of there when he felt cold metal held up against his neck. He turned to see Itachi looking at him with an appreciative smile on his face. "Excellent Naruto, you are indeed Chunin material." Itachi released his hold on the blonde and sheathed his sword. Naruto got a worried look on his face and asked, "Hey, wait a sec, you're still going to train me, right?" Ida Kai nodded and made a motion to follow him, which Naruto did. "Naruto, I would like to talk to you about that time when you broke through the barrier in the beginning of the fight. Your taijutsu kind of reminded me of Tsunade of the Sanins." Naruto made a confused look, noting Itachi that he did not know who that was. All you need to know was that she had possibly the highest chakra control level and using it to achieve super strength in the world, and there are very few people who could recreate that. You obviously do not have those chakra levels, and that's the problem. You are severely injuring the tenketsu, and if you kept doing it, it could harm your tenketsu permanently. Naruto was taken back by this. The taijutsu that he basically had was one of the only things he could use a failsafe if things got up close and personal. Wait, so I can't use chakra pulse anymore? Itachi thought for a moment and said, "Well, not entirely, eventually you will have the chakra control for it. We're just going to have to teach you about cage bunshin, then we'll make a few moves so you can use them whenever you want, not really a style, more like organized brawling. Naruto at once a lit. La on the downside began to brighten up as the explanation continued, ended with him having stars in his eyes. He immediately went to attention and said, "I'm ready, Itachi-sensei." Itachi looked at the boy who was covered in bruises, burns and cuts and just came back for more. This was going to be a long month. KIA monument. Idate, the Morino turned to see his sensei coming back with something in his hands. Idate has been going over swiping motions and gather chakra in the palm of his hand during and between his initial meeting with Kakashi yesterday. The object he was carrying looked like a short sword that you can strap to your back. Kakashi grabbed the hilt and pulled out a tanto. "This is and a few other things is what I'm going to be teaching you." Kakashi raised the sword and slashed it down. A white chakra extended from the blade and made it seem longer until it came crashing down to the ground, slashing an extra 3 feet from where the blade struck. "This belonged to my father, the White Fang of Konoha. Inuzuka compounds. Suga." The Inuzuka yelled as she turned into a human corkscrew and began flying towards her opponent. Hana raced towards her mother only to miss her at the last moment as she dodged her by inches. "Okay Hana, that's enough for physical training," Sooms said. Hana landed next to her mother and looked around to see where the Heimaru siblings were while asking, "So we're doing more than just physical training?" Soom nodded and took out 2 scrolls from her pouch. One said, "Doden," and the other said, "I," which meant doctor. Hana knew what the first one was, but the second gave her a few questions. Seeing her confusion, the Inuzuka matriarch spoke. "You Hana have excellent chakra control, much higher than others in the compound. I want you to learn the basics for medical jutsu as a med nin and a veterinarian for the compound. It will help you later in life." Hana looked down at the scroll Soom threw to her while talking, and when she looked up she nodded with determination. Though given this momentary opportunity, Soom said, "You can save your boyfriend from death on the battlefield with that." Earning a snicker from the now present nin dogs and Soom herself. Hana growled and yelled, "Ka-san." The steady wind whistled past the battered training ground, continuing on through the trees, grasses and upturned earth of the former day. A lone boy not even the age of 12 stood in a lone tree overlooking the open area where the remains of a battered wall, scorch marks and slices of wind chakra lasted through the night. The lone boy, a prodigy of his kind, let his young mind reminisce on the darker times of his life, remembering missions gone bad, the losses of one's known and one's close, the war between his home village and Anath Ur's casualties as they were wheeled in one after the other into the hospital where many of his loved ones have passed away as well. He waited for the blonde who caused much of the devastation he saw today to show up in the morning at the time they specified. Itachi then moved on to a closer to the present memory. At the time of his change to Junin, many of his peers came to him and asked if he would take on a squad. Surely some of his greatness could rub off onto his charge-ins, but because of his young age it would be too troublesome to teach someone who was most likely older than him. Instead he stuck with the A-rank missions and is one of the best because of it. Even his own superior, the Hokage, was now talking with the Anbu commander to see if he could be installed as one. But now he was faced with a very hard choice. What can I teach him? That was the problem in a nutshell. The blonde was an enigma as he was at his start. Using weights was a simple and effective choice but could not become because of his age. A human doesn't start building muscle mass until puberty, and Naruto was at half that age. Itachi let himself drift back to when he was Naruto's age. His teammates despised him because they were at the normal graduating age of 12 and he was half that of 6. His skill was in the swiftness and precision of all his strikes with lots of hard work. His teammates had brute force but he was much more agile and cunning. Naruto had lots of the same implicates and is possibly better because of his extremely large chakra supply. He actually had twice as much as a low Junin. But his control is very interesting. The blonde was able to learn the tree walking exercise early. He learned from one of the young boy's stories because he didn't have as much chakra as he would later on. If he waited until he was 12 it would take much longer for him to get it. Possibly a whole day rather than his seemingly 15 minutes of fame. With his control high now, Lee needs to strengthen it while he gets stronger, and if he does tons of chakra exercises to keep up with his rapidly increasing chakra supply. Speaking of chakra supply, his shadow clones he showed yesterday is extremely helpful. He can make about 200 of them before he gets tired, they deduced after their session, because his control is well. That is a major plus. Itachi knew what the Banyu's are for the shadow clone, and if he uses them right, then Naruto could possibly become a Junin in an even shorter amount of time than anyone can predict. That was a great step away though, and Itachi is going to make it very clear for Naruto to not use this often. The blonde's brain is still developing and it could damage him permanently. Part of being a Junin is having the experience for the level. You could be Kage level, but if you don't have any experience you will falter. Also, Naruto seems to be kind of smart. Maybe the Kyuubi has an interest in the child and gave a few upgrades when Naruto activated his chakra. The activation of his chakra could have woken the Kyuubi inside, and he gave a few changes. Itachi shook his head. He was getting off topic and there were too many variables for him to begin making assumptions about a powerful demon sealed into a child with the very power of the Shinigami. Itachi then thought of how he knows Kage Bunshin. Maybe if he added a little something about the clones, they could be more destructive. Oi, Itachi-sensei. The Uchiha looked down to see Naruto in his long blue shirt and pants with a kunai pouch and shuriken holster. His arm guards were tied around his arms but under his shirt like always, but he was missing his white coat. What? No battle coat this time? Itachi said, chuckling lightly. Naruto growled lightly, remembering how he chose not to wear the coat that day. Flashback. Naruto, now having his outfit on, was making a quick breakfast of something more healthy than everyday ramen. Naruto loathed the vegetables sizzling and the ramen cup, but they were a part of a ninja's diet. So when coming home with his battle-worn coat, he hanged himself to look like a normal brown-haired boy with green eyes and bought some vegetable ramen like he did for all his needs. Naruto did not see this coming, as it was the first time it happened. As he spun around with a piping hot cup of instant vegetable ramen, his cloak got in the way of his step and he stepped on it. Now with the cloak held down firmly in place, Naruto's upper body was pulled down and Naruto fell down with his ramen going straight to his face. The ramen sizzled his face as Naruto yelled. Ah! Naruto used the collar of his coat to wipe off what was on his face and try to remove the stinging pain. Naruto openly cursed at the coat and ramen while quickly discarded it and threw it to the couch. Flashback end. Can we just start, Itachi-sensei? Itachi allowed another snicker to manifest and dropped down to the floor. Alright Naruto, to start off with your try. Ning, I'm going show you how I'm going to train you. You have to remember the way I'm going to be training you is very dangerous and I will not allow you to do this on a regular basis, agreed. Naruto stared, utterly focused on his teacher, nodding when he finished. What kind of training would Itachi only allow Naruto to do at certain times? Alright Itachi-sensei. Did you notice anything near the end of the fight when I was dispatching your clones? Itachi asked. Naruto remembered back and the thoughts he had flew back to his mind. I remember you killing me, my clone's memories. He asked. The Uchiha nodded. Kage Bunshin no Jutsu is a technique used for scouting. You can send a clone out to a position and when it disperses, the memories return to you and you can retain the information. Naruto's eyes sparkled with glee. This was an awesome jutsu. He told himself to say thank you to his father's scroll. But then the Uchiha's eyes hardened. You must remember, Naruto. Memories, thoughts. Everything that your clones do is being blasted into your mind. Anyone could guess that a child going through this on a regular basis, that was a bad thing to do. Naruto seemed to think for several moments before asking. So what are you exactly going to teach me though? Silence flooded the small training ground. The Uchiha took on a sheepish look and childishly scratched the back of his head. Well, I don't really know what to teach you. The blonde's jaw dropped as he stared bewildered at his sensei. After that cool description, he says he has no idea what to teach me. Naruto then thought maybe for a moment that this guy wasn't as cool as he thought. His hand swung limply down to his side, still in bewilderment, and only for a moment his hand touched the kunai pouch on his hip. Naruto's mind on impulse quickly ran through the list of items it contains and suddenly remembered the scroll. Naruto, remembering the scroll, dug his hand into the pouch and pulled out the red and light blue scroll and looked at the title again. The Rasengan. Oi Itachi-sensei, what about this? Itachi looked down to the scroll. A eyebrow rose, wondering what jutsu could it contain. Naruto tossed it to the Uchiha and he caught it with little to no effort. He looked down to the title, and his eyes widened considerably. The Rasengan was one of the Yondaime's signature moves, he remembered from Kakashi-senpai's lectures. He gently opened the scroll and confirming his beliefs in the Yondaime's handwriting stated the mechanics of the jutsu. Naruto, where did you get this? He asked, you don't pick up legendary jutsus off the streets. Naruto just turned his head and thought for a moment. I think the old man gave it to me. I don't know, it was a while ago. Naruto in a thinking pose. Itachi. Those stared at him still holding the open scroll. But his staring failed as the blonde kept his gaze far away from his stare. He sighed, maybe the Sandaime did give it to him. And if not, then the Hokage should be able to tell him where he got it. He returned to the scroll and noticed the 3 steps, all of them requiring specific things. He would have to make a run to the shopping center in the city to get a large amount of water balloons, rubber balls, and regular balloons. Naruto, I have to go to the shopping center to get some supplies for this training, I'll be gone for a while. YD. Won't you wander around nearby and I'll find you when I'm done? Not waiting for an answer, he turned and left for the shopping center. The blonde after a moment growled after finding out that his haps to get here early, including the face to ramen action, had gone to waste. He sighed, not being able to find something to take out his anger, and left to the village hidden in the leaves. The blonde ventured through the streets looking at all the things the villagers bought. Civilian clothing, foods, appliances. He was halted by his inner musings when someone shouted to him. Oi! Blonde-haired Gaki. Naruto turned to see a huge man far away waving him in. He threw caution to the wind and approached. Quickly, come to our store before everything sells out because of our youthfulness. Naruto's eyebrow twitched. Would anyone ever have to say the word youthfulness ever in their lives? Is that even a word? The man was tall and was bald with huge eyebrows, and had a green tunic with a darker shade of green pants. The store wasn't very large, about the size of a small house, with the store taking up the bottom floor. But Naruto, instead of just ignoring him, began to get closer. It's not like anyone else would shout out to him to come buy something, let alone sell him anything. The sign said, Ninja Supplies of Youthfulness. He wasn't surprised to see that no one was in there. My name is Maida Shin, and this is my store. The large man roared. Naruto looked back to him to see him with a huge smile. The blonde entered the store and began looking around the store. The equipment, he could tell, was not top-of-the-line products. But they were much better than his own rusty and dull kunai. He went over a checklist in his mind of the things he needs for his chosen career. Do you have any clothing? He saw the man brighten even more, however that was possible. Naruto followed the man, who sprinted to another end of the store faster than he thought he could, to a line of clothing. They were all jumpsuits of varying colors. Naruto began walking through the clothing, feeling the fabric that was very stretching. Naruto looked back to the man, who was still smiling, with the choices of clothing, and the quality of things here. Naruto thought that he must be the first customer in a while, scratch that the first person to enter the store in a while. Naruto asked the smiling man, do you have anything that consists of pants and a shirt instead of the same thing in a one piece? The blonde saw the man's face contort into a look of sadness and started crying. Naruto immediately tried to take it back. No, it's not that I don't like them, it's just I think it's easier to get on. The Yondaime's son was surprised when the man sprinted to him and grabbed him in a back-breaking hug. I am a failure. No one likes to enter my shop, or likes the things I sell. Naruto at this time was being used as a rag doll, as was shaken left and right by the huge man. Naruto tried to get to him. I don't think that, he said while being shaken around. He was stopped when the man stopped shaking him and looked him dead in the eyes. Really? Naruto had to turn away from the red, teary, and puffy eyes. Why yeah, maybe if you could get some different clothing, some equipment with more quality, and turn down the youthfulness a little, I think you will get more customers. Naruto waited for a moment as the man contemplated his words. Naruto was brought back into a hug. Of course, the man said. I must be radiating too much youthfulness and driving people away. Thank you, young shinobi Gaki. With your advice I will spread youthfulness around the world. And suddenly the store became a rocky cast, and Naruto watched in wonder and fear as a breaker crashed up against the rocks behind them, spraying water everywhere. The genjutsu Naruto guessed ended and the boy was put down. Do you promise to come to my store? Naruto thought for a moment. Only if you get that jumpsuit to be slightly more baggy and separated. And some other things I would like to get today. He pointed towards a midnight black jumpsuit. The store owner looked between him and the jumpsuit and nodded. Also, how good are you at stitching? Later, Naruto exited the store with a wave as he left with his new wardrobe. The new look was a black jumpsuit that was not as tight as it used to be, also along the left side of the leg was the Kyuubi no Kitsune showing its 9 tails. He now had white arm and shin guards with red flames rising from the ends. On the sides of his hips were one each a scroll Shin said. That was used by Ni-sama, whoever that was. Overall he kind of liked Shin, he'll definitely return for more weapons. Elsewhere, the Uchiha prodigy passed the Hokage's secretary and made the short Tr. to his office where the cage was able to escape from for Itachi. He reached the door and opened it with a small creak after year of service. He entered the room to see the Hokage and who he could NLY guess is the Anbu commander who was in a ram's porcelain mask. Hokage-sama. Itachi bowed deeply to him. The Hokage nodded while the Anbu continued to stare at the boy. Itachi-kun, this is the Anbu commander. And he has agreed to make you one of our Anbu. Itachi looked surprised and bowed again. Thank you for accepting me into your regime's Anbu-sama. The man only nodded and disappeared. Itachi turned to the Hokage with an annoyed look on his face. Hokage-sama, why did you sign me up to become Anbu? I do not want to be a part of it. The old man's face darkened as he stared focused at the young boy. Itachi, right now you are the only one I can trust with the Uchiha. I remember how you told me of your family's intentions, and the only way to stop them is start with you entering the Anbu. The old man pushed back from the desk and reached to one of the drawers inside the desk. He reached in and pulled out a folded pile of black clothing and on the top was a porcelain white Anbu mask. He held out the suit of midnight and Itachi, apprehensively took it. He opened a scroll from his kunai pouch and quickly sealed it away for presentation to his father and the clan heads. Now Itachi-kun, this is going to be an S-rank mission, the time it takes will depend on the target but you need to keep constant awareness. Itachi listened in for his first S-rank mission. Later, the new Uzumaki Naruto smiled brighter as he saw his sensei. He raised an arm and waved like the 6-year-old he was. Oi, Itachi-sensei. But the Junin barely made a motion that he heard him. Naruto jogged forward calling his sensei's name again, still nothing. He ran in front of the Uchiha and started jumping in the air and waving his arms in front of him. Oi, Itachi. Itachi seemed to have risen from his daze as he looked down to the bouncing blonde. Oh, Naruto. I didn't see you there. I was yelling your name out, and you barely flinched. Naruto said. Itachi let a small snort pass him as he remembered the past few hours. He looked at the blonde and the kunai pouch attached to him that stored his Anbu gear and also the documents for the mission. Hey Naruto, I have the things we need. Why don't we head to the Uchiha compound to train for this? I also have something I want to drop off. Naruto nodded, saying as long as they got to some training. The two turned and with Itachi at the lead headed towards the Uchiha compound. Later at the Uchiha compound, Itachi and Naruto phased through the gates of the compound. No guards were posted namely because of the compound's major size in the village. The blonde no longer received angry glares, but he was ignored to the fullest extent. Naruto's mind created an interesting moment about what it would be like to be invisible. It wasn't far from where he is now. Naruto and Itachi passed through the small crowds of the clan to reach the clan house. It was walled up completely blocking a citizen's view with the Uchiha's clan symbol every few feet. Two men in Konoha flak jackets stood guard at the front. The blonde followed his sensei through the doorway only to be stopped in a flash by the guards. They did not speak when they caught him. Nor did they open their eyes. Itachi turned to the 6-year-old held tightly by the bodyguards. Oh, sorry Naruto, I forgot you were with me. Naruto's sweat dropped while in the grasp of the two robotic sentries. Wait out here for me, I'll be right back. He turned and disappeared into what appeared to be a main building. Uzumaki grumbled as he was released by the guards. Naruto Street. You dyed the blue stars with the Uchiha in the center on their biceps. Both were Uchiha's Naruto guess, the one on the left had a shiny nose ring that glimmered in the light. He had some kind of flat hairstyle that reminded him of a deserted road made of the rare asphalt near this very compound. The other was a shorter shinobi, but he looked much older than the post-adolescent with a nose piercing. He had a thin mustache with greasy black hair and seemed a little overweight to be a regular mission taker. Behind both their eyelids were onyx black orbs just waiting to be let out into the light. Naruto cautiously took a step forward towards Mustache. He waved both arms in the air in front of the man's face like he was signaling a ship from a deserted island. The man did not flinch, if not for their previous encounter the blonde would have thought they had died standing up. Naruto tried to snap his finger in front of the man's chubby face but remembered he couldn't snap his fingers. YBE and Hana saying he was insane may have some leeward. He cautiously took another step towards the "do not cross" line and began poking Mustache's tubby exterior. He pushed harder into the expanded stomach and his finger sank deeper into the organic mush. Mustache though held strong and did not even flinch. Naruto stared wide-eyed at the man not moving an inch after annoying him so much, which tended to get a rise out of anyone. The young shinobi turned his attention to Mohawk with a malignant smirk. Uzumaki made it his personal goal to drive one of them insane. Why? Because they were at the wrong place at the wrong time. Where Naruto was bored and when Naruto was bored. Naruto immediately began poking the boy with all his might. After making contact, his hand retreated and came back for more with another poke. Someone might think he was performing the legendary Hake Rokujuyanshu from the Hyuga clan. The teen began to flinch and grow angry, trying not to move no matter how annoying this kid was. 15 minutes later, Itachi began walking back from his room after hiding the mission scroll and the scroll he got to keep news on. He looked up and could see it right before him. Dead bodies littering the floor. Blood splatters, black flames, and a horrified little brother. He found the entrance to be a humorous sight. Naruto was poking one of the guards like no tomorrow. And the guard looked like he was about to break. He looked to the right and saw two Konoha police officers reaching the gate. "Oi Masa, your shift is over." The moment after the sentence finished there was a loud roar at the gate. "Ah, damn it Gaki, stop poking me." The teen roared. Naruto jumped back surprised that he actually moved. Itachi appeared next to Naruto and said, "I think we should leave now Naruto." The boy nodded and the two sprinted away from the pissed-off teen. Getting away from Mohawk was easy. The two doubled back, letting the teen sprint by and he didn't even notice, letting himself be dragged by his testosterone-filled anger. The two looked to each in a momentary pause, and started laughing. The laughter was short and quick as the two walked back into the middle of the street after a few moments. "Come on Naruto, I have everything to start with the Rasengan." Itachi and Naruto made quick work getting to an Uchiha training ground where Itachi took out a scroll from his back pouch. After a flick of the wrist it opened and excreted a puff of white smoke. Out came several large bags, one was filled with what Naruto thought were colorful balls. Itachi reached in and took one. It swashed around in his hands. Itachi's pause gave cue to Naruto's imagination. "Are we going to have a water balloon fight?" he said with a hint of hope. Itachi's small smile faded into a face that said, "You're kidding, right?" But he quickly remembered, this is a 6-year-old boy. "No, we are going to have to pop this balloon without chakra," Itachi said in a sagely manner. He tossed he water balloon to Naruto who caught it with ease. "Pop it with our chakra?" he asked the Anbu operative. After a pause he said, "Oh, you mean like the chakra pulse?" Itachi nodded. The first step sigh. You had to have your chakra be able to create enough force to burst a balloon. Itachi pulled out the red and light blue colored scroll and passed it to Naruto who opened the scroll and noticed a diagram of what seemed to be scribble lines in a circle. Naruto put the scroll down and put both hands on the balloon. One on the top and one on the bottom. He concentrated on the openings in his hands and began letting out chakra. After inserting an efficient amount, he began to move it around inside the balloon, pushing it this way and that. He visibly noticed the balloon moving with the water. Naruto looked up to see if Itachi was watching, but he was looking at the scroll Naruto dropped. Naruto tried to move it around a little more and found that this exercise was very easy. "I'll finish this jutsu by dusk." He moved his chakra and surged it forward. He saw the balloon push near breaking point when suddenly, pop! A hole appeared in the front of the balloon. Water and chakra escaped out the same way. chakra dispersing and water dripping to the ground. Itachi turned to look at the boy with a surprised look on his face. Does that count, Itachi-sensei? Itachi stared at the balloon and said. Are you happy with it? He said, and he pulled out a balloon for himself. He looked at the balloon and started planning how he was going to try it. Naruto looked at the balloon in his hand before giving a childish sigh. He threw the balloon down and quickly grabbed another from one of the bags. Itachi seemed to be still looking at the balloon, analyzing it like a tactician to a map. Naruto grabbed his own balloon and focused on the balloon he was holding. He had to make the balloon burst, not just make a hole in it. Maybe if he made the chakra go in a circle, the balloon will pop in all directions and make it explode. He began pushing the water in a circle and was slightly pleased to see it. Now if he got it to move around enough, it will explode. 1 hour later. Now Naruto was severely frustrated. He has been spinning around the chakra in his palm for much longer than he would have wanted, and he now declared that that was not the way to do it. And Itachi-sensei was still staring at the balloon, absolutely motionless. Stupid technique, he said, and threw his balloon at Itachi. The balloon seemed to go straight into Itachi's crotch, causing a high-pitched squeal to erupt from the nin. Naruto though just turned around to face the rest of the opening in the forest. He saw the wind pushing the grass to and fro. He continued staring at the wind changing direction, several more seconds of this and his eyes widened. He turned and ran to the red and light blue scroll on the ground. Itachi was continuing to groan in pain, thinking about when the balloon popped and gave him whiplash. Naruto picked the scroll up and quickly started rolling it open. He found the diagram and stared at it hard. His eyes widened and he grinned to himself. It's so simple. The scribbles weren't just to represent chakra. Naruto thought while grabbing a new water balloon. He held it with 2 hands, one on top, one on bottom. It was pointing out the direction they were supposed to go in. Naruto began feeding chakra into the balloon. He started shooting the chakra into random directions towards freedom, forcing the water to follow. Naruto watched as the balloon seemed to begin bubbling. He smirked while holding his concentration. Naruto finally knew he was going in the right direction. He began to add more chakra and make it more ferocious. The stretching increased all around the balloon as it swelled, and suddenly, blah pop! The water balloon burst in his hands and Naruto smiled with glee. Yes. He raised his hands in the air for emphasis. He turned back to see Itachi on the ground but not moving again. When a recent memory arose. Are you happy with it? Naruto looked at the scraps of balloon in his hands. Naruto smirked to himself. I guess I'm not done with it. He wordlessly grabbed another water balloon. Maybe he could completely obliterate the balloon or do it faster, maybe even do it with one hand. Elsewhere. Then how am I supposed to use it if I can't see? The Morino said. Ao had a sword that went parallel with his backbone. The sensei just smiled at him. Then you are just going to have to learn how to fight blind. And this is good because I've been meaning to get some actual training in blind fighting anyway. Sunset was beginning to leak into dusk, meaning the end of the day for most of the Konoha populace, but for the more stubborn shinobi the possibilities just changed. I wonder how Naruto is doing. Idate said, mostly to himself. Kakashi caught the remark and just smiled. If I know him I think he's fine. He said. The 8-year-old Idate smiled to himself and nodded. If anything, he should be worried at how he would survive against Naruto. Early morning. The wind continued to blow through the trees, finally touching the opening in the forest where a blonde-haired boy lay asleep resting against a large tree. The sun was beginning to peek through the forest, resting on the many surfaces including Naruto's face. Naruto stirred and was soon stretching his body while on the ground. His eyes opened and he quickly remembered the happenings from yesterday with a smile. His memories of yesterday's training came with the feeling of success. He was finally able to do it with one hand and obliterate the balloon to beyond shreds after lots of practice and concentration. Naruto turned his head to the still form of Itachi Uchiha. Thankfully he was able to fall asleep after being in that trance for so long. A loud rumbling came to his ears, signaling him that he hasn't eaten anything since yesterday. But could you really blame him? He learned the first part of the series of one of his father's prized jutsus. I would have forgotten something as meager as hunger with that. He slowly got to his feet, making sure to pop all the joints he could. Naruto turned to his sensei, who happened to fall asleep in the fetal position. He walked over to Itachi and started kicking at the prone form. Oi Itachi-sensei, I'm going to get something to eat. The Uchiha stirred slightly and looked up at Naruto. Is it sunset already? He asked the blonde, noticing the orange skies above them. Naruto just stared at him and looked back towards the rising orange sun. No, it's sunrise. You didn't move since we started training. Naruto deadpanned. Itachi had the decency to look surprised and a little embarrassed. But he can clearly remember what he was phasing out to. Itachi sat up and looked around. In one spot seemed to hold a large amount of popped water balloon. He turned to Naruto. So you got the first part of the training. Naruto seemed to smile, but another groan F. Rom, his empty churning stomach alerted him to the pressing matter at hand. I'm going to go get some breakfast. Naruto turned and started jogging away. See ya Itachi-sensei. Itachi watched Naruto jog away with a small smile. He looked back to the scroll that was lying open. As a fun fact, the writer of the scroll printed how long it took the Yondaime to complete the jutsu and how long it would take guessed for an average ninja to do it. His eyes widened when he saw the date of the first part. 10 months. And this little bastard did it in a few hours. In the village. Naruto was now well into the village. Heading back to his home where some instant ramen was waiting for him. Nowadays, after the moment with the construction worker before he went to the academy, the villagers tended to ignore him utterly with a hint of hate. He could practically disappear into the crowds and nobody would pay him any mind. But he didn't care, truthfully. He didn't have to worry about them right now. All he had to worry about was his team. His sensei and the Hokage. And if he could count inanimate objects, that picture of his parents with a pregnant Kushina and his father's scroll. Everyone else were bystanders watching his immediate life and his big 6-year-old smile. And he wasn't going to let some ignorance ruin his bright smile. Oi! Naruto turned to see what looked like a small bar to his right. And inside was the team that beat the first exam with his. Enko was smiling to him. His advice did hit a nerve, he guessed. Next to her was the 2 other boys on her team. They had more confused but friendly looks on their faces. You hungry? She asked, yelled with that contagious smile. Naruto couldn't help but smile a small smile himself as he walked into Ichiraku ramen stand. Naruto observed the man's unwavering smile before he was pulled into a stool his size by the smiling purple head. Aren't we supposed to be enemies? Naruto asked politely to the team. The 3 though gave him confused looks. The boy with the patch over his nose, Kotetsu, answered. Just because we are going to fight in a month doesn't mean we have to act hostile towards each other. The other 2 nodded to the boy. We're part of the same village. No need to make rivalries. Naruto just nodded to himself. Now that he thought about it, that sounds pretty stupid to him. Naruto acted a little embarrassed and T scratched the back of his head and said sorry. So what will you be having? Naruto turned to see the man behind the counter washing a ramen bowl with a small smile. Naruto was slightly surprised because he never ate out of his house. He felt an arm wrap around him and pull him in. He'll take a miso Oji-san, she said with a Naruto grin. Naruto looked to the girl twice his age in surprise, but he nodded to the owner. The man smiled and yelled to the back. Ayame. 1 miso ramen. A high pitch, hi, and a young brown-haired girl came from the back, possibly 8 or 9 years old. She only da head over the boiler as she worked on his ramen. How good is this place? Naruto asked. The team smiled and all gave a thumbs up. He turned back to Enko, who was still holding Naruto in a one-arm hug. Dango is much better though. Izumo, Naruto remembered after Kotetsu put his bowl down with a noticeable clank. Don't listen to her, she thinks Dango is better than air. If she could, she would breath Dango. Enko turned to him and said. Who wouldn't? She turned to the blonde next to her. You would, right? Naruto shrugged. I've never had it before. The Uzumaki could feel the stare coming from Enko and it unnerved him. She stood up and threw her arms out in surprise. What do you mean you've never had Dango? Naruto tried to be defensive. I just get instant ramen because I never get around to trying new things. Enko though sat down and answered in a non-negotiable tone. Then you and me are going to get some Dango at 6 in the afternoon. We'll meet in front of the Hokage Tower. Izumo and Kotetsu looked at each other and back at her. This is new, Naruto answered. Okay. The conversing lightened there as the team worked on eating their ramen and Naruto sat still waiting for his meal. So how long have you been genin? Naruto asked, refusing to have silence, while waiting for something. They smiled and held up 2 fingers. 2 years. Naruto smiled and answered back with 3 fingers. 3 months. The team looked surprised at him before Izumo smiled and said, "Hey, aren't you a little eager to be going up the ranks?" Naruto looked at him confused. "You should take time relaxing in your rank. If we wanted to become Chunin earlier we could have. But we don't have any pressure on any missions. The worst we can get is we won't find a cat." Naruto snickered at that. "When you make Chunin you should take some C-rank missions for a while and relax. Rather than doing a B rank and have people die." Izumo finished his monologue, but his tone lowered at the end of the sentence. When he finished, it seems Ayame finished his meal. "Here you go, daddy," she said to the head chef, and she handed him the ramen. She turned to Naruto and smiled. He smiled back. The old man took it and placed it in front of the blonde. The smells from the ramen had been arriving at Naruto's nose since he was a block away, and he finally had some of the precious meal. Naruto took one of the chopsticks in the small cup in front of him and picked up some of the noodles. He guided it to his mouth and began slurping up the noodles. The ramen was absolutely delectable, heart swap. Ed for his eyes as he discovered a new kind of love. His mouth began to vacuum the rest of the ramen up until most of the contents were gone save for the broth. Naruto was eager to pick the bowl up and drink the broth down. Naruto placed the empty bowl down on the counter as he gave a content sigh of happiness. He slid the bowl away and said to the old man, "If this is okay then I can't wait till I have some dango. I'm going to need another, sir." The man just smiled and got his youngest daughter to work on another. Naruto waited patiently for his next ramen as his new friends laughed at his change in likings. Naruto will definitely come here more often. Naruto went through several bowls of ramen, providing sideshow entertainment for his company as the bowl stacked higher and higher. The Ichirakus watched in amazement. Ayame was finally not obscured by the tall counter as Naruto and the squad could see tiny hands handing her father a steaming bowl of ramen. Naruto stopped and seemed to take a huge breath and let it out. They all sweat dropped. If they didn't know any better they would have thought he was holding his breath. "So what's it like in your band of misfits?" Kotetsu asked. Naruto paused after a moment and thought. "We've been together since I started the academy," Naruto said. "And we're lucky that we were put together on a team. We hated each other," Enko added, seemingly random between slurps from ramen. Kotetsu and Izumo both laughed at that. "We couldn't stand each other. Our sensei usually had to stop us from fighting all the time." Enko paused and said, "But after a bad mission it brought us together." Naruto thought for a moment. "Where's your sensei now?" "Dead," Izumo said. Naruto noticed that they all were looking more solemn at their bowls. "It took our sensei's life to figure out how close we are," he continued. They all stayed silent for a moment, but gradually a smile arose from all of them and Naruto could feel the stand brighten a little. "Even though we miss her, we'll never forget her and how she's helped us," Kotetsu said. "I can't thank her enough." Enko and Izumo nodded at that. Naruto stayed silent at that and said, "Who was she?" Enko stood up and took a firm stance in front of him. For a moment Naruto thought she was going to punch him. "She was Kudo Ayane, and don't you forget it," she said with a confident smirk while pointing at him. The truth is that the reason she was able to smile so quickly in front of Naruto when they met at the Chunin exams is that her sensei always told her to smile more. And Naruto was able to let her remember it. Not let her repress it like with Orochimaru. She was the best damn seal master in the Fire Country. Forget Jiraiya of the Sannin or the 4th Hokage, she could do anything. The 4th Hokage actually learned seals mostly from her. Enko boasted about her sensei. Izumo jumped up next to her and took a stance only equal to hers in feeling. He also had tears in her eyes, but Naruto could tell they were tears of pride. She was also the prettiest of all kunoichi anywhere in the elemental kan no the world. Naruto's young mind tried to paint a picture of a woman who taught the 4th Hokage. The painting showed a strong woman in Viking armor facing a kneeling version of his father who didn't look so epic with his white coat in the dirt. Naruto wanted to learn more about this goddess she was speaking about. What did she look like? Enko produced a framed picture from who knows where. She handed it to Naruto and he saw this famed Ayane. She definitely was not wearing Viking armor but a lavished yukata with a fan in the wrappings in front of her waist. She had lightning yellow blonde hair and she had the only smiling face in the photo. To her left she held with Wa. T looked lightly but Naruto had some feeling it was like trying to escape a mountain being crushed over you, Anko, who had a very angry look to her right. On the left a younger Kotetsu was being held by seemingly nothing but still seemed to be struggling. And finally in her right hand held with that mountain yet soft grip was Izumo who had an angry face and was facing his left. Naruto looked up and handed it back to Anko. She's really pretty, he said with a small smile. Kotetsu pointed to the picture. I'm stuck because she sealed me to her leg to hold still. It's one of her most prized seals. She can make something move towards something else and stay there. Naruto's eyes widen at the possibilities of a seal that can do that. She never told us but I think the Yondaime took that and me up with the legendary Hiraishin technique. Naruto's eyes widened even more as he remembered a black and yellow scroll labeled Hiraishin. He just thought it was another Oke-jutsu. Anko nodded to that. Yeah, if it wasn't for Ayane-sensei we never would have won the Konoha Iwa War. And the two boys nodded to that. Naruto's mind diverted away to do a little math. His father plus Konoha equals War 1 so his father equals Konoha. So if Iwa hates Konoha then Iwa hates his father. And if his father equals himself, then Iwa hates him. Needless to say Naruto is going to try and stay out of Earth Country. What's the Hiraishin? Naruto asked. Everyone in the stand turned to look at him like he just grew a second head. What's the Hiraishin? How did you pass the academy? Anko asked the kid as she stared at him in amazement. Naruto flustered but quickly tried to retort. Hey, I didn't have to go through those classes, I skipped those and I stayed in how to use chakra and strategies. Sorry. Quote, nobody really knows how to use it because the Yondaime didn't want people who could use it badly to learn it so he never told a soul to his dying breath. The technique makes him teleport to a kunai that was inscribed with seals. The only thing the enemy would see is a yellow flash, hence the name. The chef said while cleaning some of Naruto's used bowls. The ninja just stared at the man like fish out of water. Nay, how do you know all that, Ichiraku-san? Naruto said. The old man smiled and answered with some pride. I've been running this stand since the second Hokage's reign. You tend to pick these things up from customers. The surprisingly old man said with a nod. Daddy's an old man, he can't even play tag with me without breaking a hip. The girl behind the counter said with a pout. The nin could see because she was sitting on a stool that is behind the counter. All the ninjas sitting at the counter started laughing hysterically. Anko was banging on the table trying to stop the pain in her abs from the continued laughing. The old man gained an angry gaze on the genin but it was failing to work with the flustered cheeks. That happened one time, he muttered to himself. The En's laughs quelled and they stopped with a smile. Naruto stood up and stretched. I've got to get back to training. I've still got to kick your butts in the exams. Naruto said with a smile. His smile faltered though when Anko kicked him in the stomach. Naruto was blasted back 10 meters and came to a stop when he fell over on the ground. But the blonde was engulfed in white smoke to reveal a stool. Anko turned without any surprise to see Naruto standing next to a taller Ayame. Bye. And he ran away at top speed. I like him, Anko said with a smile. He's alright, the other two said after staring at Anko for a moment. They slurped up some more noodles before they felt a gaze on them. They looked to see Kyuki Ichiraku staring at them with a malicious glint. Since he's gone, I guess you take care of the bill. They turned to see the sink practically full of cleaned bowls, and that is no hard task with it being half a meter deep. Elsewhere, Naruto visibly shook for no apparent reason. He looked around but felt no eyes on him. But that feeling came from somewhere. Naruto backtracked to the training grounds him and Itachi were using an hour ago. Itachi was there holding a balloon. Naruto was thankful to see that the balloon was swashing around rather than Itachi having a moment, a period, of time. Itachi noticed him but went back to his balloon. Naruto just smiled. Oi Itachi-sensei, he said like he just came home from work. He walked over to the open scroll and began opening it more and more to reveal the second step. Naruto read how it excellently explained the first step and how Naruto completed it above average with the time he spent late at night. He shot a glance over at Itachi-sensei who was wordlessly attempting to master the first step. He was going to need rubber balls now. To make the chakra stronger. He turned to see another bag next to the bag of water balloons. Out of curiosity he opened it wider to look and to reveal tie-dye rubber balls. Naruto looked over to Itachi again. If he saw him doing the jutsu then he will get how to do it. Naruto pulled one out and began to hold it in position when Naruto heard a whizzing sound and saw a nice slice into a tree closer to Itachi than Naruto and stop. A small note was attached to it. Naruto jumped away from the explosive tag, rushing to hide behind a tree ball forgotten. He paused behind the tree, no explosion. He looked to the kunai from his hiding spot to see Itachi reading the note. Naruto ran out to meet him. What is it, Itachi-sensei? A mission, he said. Itachi turned to Naruto. I have to go. I will be waiting for an improvement from this jutsu you are working on. Itachi did a short wave and jumped away back towards the village. Naruto paused at the scene before him. He no T.C.E.D. There was no water balloon on the ground, meaning Itachi took it with him. Naruto smiled as he knew he was getting under his sensei's skin. Naruto took another look at the scroll and held the ball out with one hand. Phew, that was hard. Anyway, the winner of the poll is Kitsune no Sennin. I already have the chapter ready and I will publish it tomorrow. Today is Thursday in the eastern United States. I hope everyone tells me how I did in the story and I will finish the next chapter as soon as possible. That's it for today, I will stop here. I hope you all enjoyed this video. If you please see Onsider, subscribe and make sure to hit that like button, share with your friends and don't forget to check out author of this story. Details in description.